Say good morning to everyone, and thank you for joining us for this session on VR leadership, for pathways to leadership, I should say. We're excited to have you for this session on leadership in VR. I'm joined today by Veronica Jackson, who is a research consultant and training manager for UA Currents, and Dr. Adrian Robinson, of course, our esteemed colleague from UAPB. We're going to be sharing, as I'm talking, I'm going to share my screen. I think this is the right one. So this is the agenda for today, and I apologize if you see black boxes. I don't know how to make that go away. So maybe I can stop my caption so you don't see. Nope, can't do it. So we'll start out with a discussion of the SWOT, and then we'll go have a brief break. Veronica will be sharing understanding and defining leadership and our leadership styles. We'll take another break and then come back and do the emotional bank accounts and then how that relates to motivation and engagement in the workplace. After the noon break, we'll come to Dr. Robinson, who will share with us understanding the personal accountability model, and then we'll talk through the homework and adjourn at 1 p.m. Central Time or noon Mountain Time. So I'm going to share again my screen, and before I do that, let me do a few little things so that you'll see all those. Thank you. All right. So before we get started, do we have any questions on what a SWOT is? Because I have a brief video I thought I would share to give us a good reminder on the value of the SWOT. Any questions or clarity needed for what a SWOT analysis is? Everyone good there, or would you like to see the video, or what's the consensus of the group? Okay, so let's see the video. I'm gonna share my screen, and first, let me find the video, make sure it's still up. It's never fun when it's just one screen. It's never fun. So let me do this, share my sound, and stop my video. I'm gonna stop my video for bandwidth, and then we'll get it started.
Hi, I'm Eric from WordStream, and welcome back to the WordStream YouTube channel. Today, we're going to talk about SWOT analysis. I don't know about you, but I don't think there's anybody on your team that went to Hogwarts for high school or did their undergrad at Brakebills. The idea of predicting the future requires magic, or it requires informed planning that you can think about yourself and think about things in a more cogent, coherent, and honest way. And that's really the best way to embark upon a project. And that's where a SWOT analysis comes in. No matter how big your company, your team, or your organization, knowing exactly where you want to get to and how you're going to get there is an important task before embarking upon a project. And a SWOT analysis gives you the structure and, more importantly, the data that you need in order to be able to achieve those goals. So what is a SWOT analysis? Well, a SWOT analysis is a way for you to understand where the stepping stones are that can bring you to success, or where the pitfalls are that can lead to failure that you can avoid. And it's all about being honest with yourself and with your team. Honesty is going to come up quite a bit in these discussions. First is the first S, which is strengths. So understanding what you're good at. What is the team really exceptional at achieving? Given the task at hand, you sort of say, hey, this is why I think our team, our group, our organization, our company could do well to achieve this task, because these are the things that are going to help us get there, the stuff that we are legitimately good at, the strengths of your team or your org. And remember, don't think about strengths as something purely internal about what your team does best and what your company does best. Think about the initiative that you're actually looking to achieve, the product that you're looking to roll out. Always think about strengths from the customer's perspective. How can this product, this feature benefit those customers, and what are those strengths? That also goes into the S of a SWOT analysis, and it's important to keep that in mind. Second thing, it's more the bad news. These are weaknesses. These are things that, again, you're honest with yourself about the things that you're not good at all, things that you may be lacking from a people perspective or a skills perspective, that you know that through the prism of trying to achieve this task, the weaknesses that are going to prevent you from doing so. Eventually, you'll figure out how to solve those weaknesses. That can be later on down the road. But for the initial discussion of a SWOT analysis, just identifying what the weaknesses are will allow you to have a much more informed place to start the planning process. And when you're thinking about weaknesses, sometimes you have to talk about the feature or the product or the task, the initiative that you're rolling out. Those things may have inherent weaknesses. It's not just about the team or the company or the organization. Sometimes you may have to say the quiet part loud with the product guy in the room if the minimum viable product that you're bringing out to the marketplace is insufficient or it's lacking features. So be honest about that when you're talking about weaknesses as part of the SWOT analysis. Now let's talk about the next thing, opportunities, the O in SWOT. Opportunities are places where your company can conceivably grow. Green field for you to run into. Where are things that you can do within the confines of your company, your team, your org, in accomplishing this task, and the opportunities for growth by which you can achieve it. And there's a flip side to opportunities. Those, of course, are threats. What are those scary things that are coming up behind you in your flank? What are the things that could potentially come up and bite you and through the course of accomplishing this goal, rolling out this product, or achieving this large company initiative? The threats that you identify during this process are going to help you understand what it is you may run into as you start building for the future. SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the best way to do a SWOT analysis is in a group. Get your favorite brainstorm facilitator in the room. Say, okay, leave all your egos at the door, stay outside the room, and let's start talking radically candid with one another about these things. Being honest with yourself about the good stuff is easy. Strengths and opportunities, everybody can say the good things because everybody comes in with a positive feeling about meetings in the first place, or at least I do, and the folks here at WordStream do. But when it comes down to be really candid and really honest with one another, that's where weaknesses and threats can sometimes be more difficult conversations. So as you're brainstorming about these things, just be understanding of the fact that you don't want to step on anybody's toes, but you do want to be as prepared as you possibly can as you look to execute on these projects. A SWOT analysis is not something you're going to do right the first time. It's going to take some getting used to, particularly with the radical candor stuff that we were talking about earlier. But get a team together that's honest and open-minded and willing to talk with one another, leaves their egos outside. You'll be able to do a SWOT analysis the second, third, maybe the fourth time, just as good as any expert in the big Fortune 500 companies that are out there that do these things quite regularly. I'm Eric from WordStream. Thank you for watching this video on the WordStream YouTube channel. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next time we come to you. We talk about how to conduct a SWOT analysis a little bit more in depth. See you then.
All right, so here we are back, and I will share my screen again, and we'll talk through the SWOT that we came up with our in-person session. So I think I've got too many windows going on right here. So just 1 second. Close that. All right. Can you all see that? This?
Yes.
All right, so we said in our meeting last month that our strengths were diverse services, that we had skilled subject matter experts, that there were training opportunities, staff are able to gain CEUs, that you have qualified staff, there's opportunities for growth, fringe benefits of the agency, long-term outcomes in terms of impact with our consumers. Resources are long-term for our customers. Community access and accessibility, that there are career pathways, the agency inclusiveness, financial stability of the agency. The agency addresses a variety of barriers, the permanence of the organization. People can access our services more than once. It doesn't count as attrition, and that there is no wait list. Okay, those were the strengths that you identified. Are there any strengths that you want to add to the list? Any strengths that you want to add to the list that you have thought of since then?
Well, I had a lot that I just got from the video that you had posted or we had watched before. So I've got it here.
The research study from.
Yes. Let me grab it. Put it on my sent. We didn't put the hiring process whenever we started. I had applied for the workforce specialist job in January, and I got hired on in March. And I also had applied at the same time for the VRS position, and I didn't hear from them until May. So it's like they were 2 months behind. So the hiring process takes a long time. And whenever I left my position to be the community outreach person, it took them, it was October. We just got somebody hired in March at April 1st. She started April 1st. So that's a long time for, hiring process, because people want jobs now. They're not, they're going to take a job offer somewhere else. So the hiring process is what I put on there that we didn't have.
Is that considered a strength or a weakness?
I put it as a weakness.
Okay, well, I'm gonna put it down here. Hiring process takes too long. Y'all can see that. So let's go back up though. Elaine, did you have any strengths that you wanted to add to that list? Strengths of the agency?
The job is rewarding. It can be very rewarding because we're helping people. We're getting them the services they need. So I did put that as a strength. Teleworking has been a strength for a lot of people. I know some people don't like to do it, or they do really like to do it. I'm not an introvert, so that's a hard time, but I really enjoy having those 2 days to focus and be able to be at home and at my office desk here to be able to focus and I like it. So I think that's a strength. A flexible schedule, teleworking has been a strength for me.
Right.
And that's what I read, kind of went through his report. And again, commitment. I think VRCs, RAs, I think everyone's committed to doing their job. It's just there's so much paperwork and documentation. And, I think we had mentioned paperwork, but I don't think it got on the list. It may have as a weakness or threat. It may have been on there. I don't know.
The VR process is a weakness. We'll go ahead and look at those. Potentially eligible demographics, no buy-in. VR process, the PE process, purchasing, ties up funding, encumbrances, supported employment, policy, service authorization. So maybe paperwork here. Did you want to put that, or is that part of it?
Yeah, I think so. That's what I had put on there is caseloads are really big. I have seen some in, the Metroplex of Dallas, and I'm going, oh my gosh, I don't know how these people do it. I'm in Amarillo and we have 40 people on the case. And when I was an RA, I had 2 counselors, and I was going, they really need one counselor to themselves, because there was so much in transition RA. There was just so much. I couldn't,
Yeah.
the paperwork and the forms so that's kind of what I put on there. Low salaries for counselors. I think they could, a lot of people are paying higher for counselors. And we had a person who got her LPC, and she left, and as soon as she got that, and she was our deaf and hard of hearing person. So that really, she was one of the long timers that had been there for like 7 years. So, there's the salaries are something that I saw on the report. A weakness was a limited opportunity for VRCs to have greater time and direct customer contact due to data entry and doc requirements. So I think that was up there in our
Can you
weakness.
repeat that?
Yes, it was limited opportunities for the VRCs to have greater time with direct customer contact due to data entry and document requirements.
Thank you. I see there are some chats. Veronica or Adrian, can you all read those?
Sure. Let me see. Sandy says, even though turnover is high, I agree that a hybrid environment is a positive for recruiting. Brandon, I agree with Elaine. It feels like we are getting away from the counseling approach and more policies and slower processes for customers.
Mm-hmm.
So do I need to add slower processes for customers, or is that covered here under VR process as a weakness? I'll put overall process too slow.
Yeah, that kind of goes with it.
All right, other weaknesses, I'll just go through and read the rest of them. Communication, internal, top to bottom versus bottom up. So top to bottom versus a bottom up. You feel like you're not being heard. Staffing, each counselor needs their own RA, but this may create heavier workloads, lack of accountability, response to customers or partners in the community. There is considered a weakness, our response to customers or partners. That may have a lot to do with how we are perceived or the paperwork, caseloads. Lack of vendors inhibits service provision. Our rate of pay to vendors is too low. Inconsistency with policy versus procedure across the agency, how it's interpreted, how it's applied. Avoiding paperwork, purchasing, lack of knowledge of state contracts. The hiring process takes too long. Low salaries for counselors. Limited opportunity for VRCs to have greater time with direct customer contact due to data entry and document requirements. Opportunities, so strengths are internal, weaknesses are internal, opportunities are external. External opportunities that we have that could be something we could take advantage of. We had 3. More partnerships with mom and pop operations. Social networks, I think that's supposed to be separate.
Mm-hmm.
Social networks that can connect us to more people, like using social media or social media reps. Someone mentioned Padlet. Recruitment is an opportunity as well as medical partnerships. So I don't know, maybe recruitment and medical are sub parts of the more partnerships. Because
they mentioned promote within the agency instead of hiring people from outside. If they have a person there, and that's what happened to me. I mean, I wouldn't say a promotion, I had a job change, but they could have picked somebody who had a master's for this position, and they hired within. So I think they're getting better about that. I really do. it's in Region 1. I can't speak for the other regions, but they did have opportunities to promote from within the agency.
Okay. Promote from within the agency. I'll just say it like that.
And to they had provide continual staff training. To me, I mean, I think we have a lot of meetings.
As an opportunity.
Yes, they had it as an opportunity, but in my opinion, we have a lot of meetings. I mean, there's a lot of training opportunities, just like we're doing today with you. That's, you know, definitely a training opportunity, but it seems like you can have a meeting and over a meeting continually. So maybe, I don't know. I don't know how you can balance the caseload compared to all the meetings that you have, that the counselors have especially. So
Bobby, you have your hand up.
Yes, Dr. Freeman, I have a comment on tagging along with what Elaine was saying just now. I wrote on for strengths, and I don't know if that actually belongs there. I don't know what you think. I put continuous improvement and innovation. That is something that characterizes our agency because they're constantly looking at, okay, how can we be more efficient? Where are we lacking and what can we do about it? So I feel that that's an ongoing thing. So that I see that as a strength, but it can also be an opportunity. And in opportunities, I put to gain a broad skill set or expand your skills and knowledge in so many different areas, because we do have a lot of trainings. That's also in line with what Elaine was saying. And I like that. I don't like meetings for nothing. That's a waste of time. And a lot of times it's a meeting that, you know, you could have told me in 5 minutes, just get to the point and not waste an hour of my time on nothing, you know, so I don't appreciate those. But I do appreciate and I feel fortunate to be in this agency in terms of how you can get training for whatever area that you feel weak in. You know, and you know, I think we all have our weaknesses. It could be something related to, I don't know, mental health, substance abuse, just a job placement process, assistive devices, just depending on what your position is and what knowledge is necessary for you to perform well in that position. There is a training out there. They have a lot of training, so I like that. So I don't know if that would be, is that an opportunity or a strength, or is it both? I still don't have those totally clear, so I don't know what you all think.
The strength is something that you currently have in place that is an internal thing for the agency. So do you have opportunities for continued staff training? Do you have opportunities to expand your skills and knowledge?
Yes, so that would be a strength then. Yes,
Okay, I'm gonna put it there.
I would categorize it as a strength then.
All right,
Yeah.
and go ahead, you had other comments?
I was gonna comment something on threats and something I put for weaknesses. Are we there yet or not?
Go
Yes.
ahead.
Okay, so for threats, I think it's a major threat that there are a lot of other employment opportunities. There's a lot of competition out there. And in relation to salaries, flexibility, work from home, which is something that a lot of people love. I personally like to come to the office, but a lot of people would want to be 100% working from home. You know, everybody's circumstances are different. So that in itself, a lot of people, I have coworkers who have left because they got a job that was 100% from home. They got a pay cut and they don't care because they're actually saving in the long run with gas and commuting and all these things. They don't have to iron their
Did I go? Okay.
convenience in
repeat what you
that having that option. So that is a threat. So if they don't improve or expand on the opportunities of working from home, and I think they're looking at that because I recently in the meeting, they said that instead of having 2 days option, I think they're going to move it to 3 days. I'm not totally sure on that, but I think that's what I understood. So and they're already working on salary. So you know, so that's, I'm not saying nothing that's new. I don't believe that's new, but it is a threat in my opinion, because if they don't offer it here and it's something that I value very much, well, I'm going to look to a place that does have what I want. You know, so that would be a threat, in my opinion. Having the competition from other businesses or agencies or whatever.
Okay.
Dr. Freeman, did you see
Mm-mm.
I don't know if we read the chats, but
I haven't gotten to them yet.
okay.
Javier, competition from organizations that offer benefits that we don't offer. Did that capture everything?
Yeah, I think that encompasses everything. Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Robinson, can you read the chat?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Since the last one, Reba said PE should also be listed as a strength.
PE,
PE,
okay,
I think it was up there maybe under a weakness, I think.
PE process is a weakness, but it's also a strength.
Should also be listed as a strength. Customers get to choose whether they just want partial services or to become full active customers. They have the opportunity for informed choice.
I was just gonna say informed choice.
Okay, and then Carlina said Texas VR is leading in policy and innovation in comparison with other VR programs. So that sounds like a strength.
Strength. Texas VR is leading in policy and innovation.
Yes, ma'am. And then,
Policy and innovation
yes, ma'am, innovation.
nationally, is that correct?
I'm thinking so because it says in comparison with other state VR programs.
It
Okay,
has more funding. They're always looking at, ways to improve. It just needs, which I think is a strength. It just needs to be balanced. The spill effect and, taking care of your staff and streamlining things so it's not so heavy for their staff to process things. So at the end, the customers can get the services quicker and perhaps better quality.
so Carlina, then I'm guessing while you have that as a strength, then the weakness here is that we're not putting more focus on staff, empowering staff. Is that how to sum that up, or is it?
It will be an opportunity to, use that. That will be an area of opportunity. We should focus on how can we want to stay updated. We want to be doing the best and leading in different areas, but how can we turn that into the process? How we can improve the process? So maybe research in that area, streamlining the process so it could affect positively our staff and our bottom line, which is customer services and employee retention.
Okay. Taking advantage of the agency's position to improve staff process. Is that right? Or you may change that in some way? Sorry.
I guess it's the process, the VR process, like Elaine and Javi and the rest have mentioned, that we make it so convoluted because we want to be in compliance. So I think they are wanting to do the right thing. It's just a steered away. It just need to refocus in regards of how we can streamline the process to make it more effective, to make a better impact in quality services and employee retention.
All right, thank you. Dr. Robinson.
There was only one other comment. I don't know if I'm gonna say that name right. But low pay is always a concern or threat for state agencies. However, the benefits are great and are a strength.
Low salaries we have under weaknesses, and I think we did have benefits up under
I see it.
strengths.
Okay, and that was all.
All right, great. Anyone else? Thank you for all of those.
Holidays, we get state holidays. And that is just nice. And we get like this week, we have, it's a optional holiday. So
What's the
that is
optional
kind of-
holiday?
yeah, so that's a
What is
perk, that's
it?
a strength.
Oh, we have optional holidays and then skeleton crew days. So if you work a skeleton crew day, and okay, it sounds a little complicated sometimes. So if you work a skeleton crew day, it's optional. You can take, or no, the optional holidays you can take off or not, right? If you work the optional holiday, when there's another skeleton crew day, you get an extra 8 hours of leave. If you choose to take the optional holiday off, you have to work the next skeleton crew day. And then nothing happens. There's no penalty, right? So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities to earn additional leave time by working skeleton and optional holidays.
That's great.
Mhm.
Brandon says he found out a couple of weeks ago that you have a tuition assistance program. Should staff want to continue their education, credentials, that's definitely a strength or an opportunity. So we'll add that there. All right, anything else that comes to mind?
I just had one more, reevaluate how job openings are posted and expand sources for recruitment.
Opportunities.
Yeah,
Um,
reevaluate how job openings are posted and expand sources for recruitment.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I never even knew about Taleo until this, community outreach position came open and the VRM alerted me to it. I would have never known to go there. And I've been with the agency for over 4 years now. So, and I don't know how anybody could find it. And so it's kind of a weird deal, like I think, to
Well,
find
one
somebody.
thing that's always drove me nuts about job postings is they put the entire salary range.
Mhm.
So like that pay can be from like $3,000 to $6,000, and it's very misleading
It is.
because typically, I thought like when I applied, surely I'm going to be at least, middle of the pack, maybe higher end with my experience. And like, that was not the case. So I feel like that wage differential is very misleading to a lot of people because they do assume they're going to get on that higher end, and more times than not, it's not the case.
Okay, thank you. Are there other chats? Anything else in the chat?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So what our next step would be, this is all great. Thank you all for sharing additional thoughts. I know, especially if you read the report from, I always get it confused, is it Penn State or UPenn? I want to say it's UPenn. I may be wrong, but great information that they share. There were some great suggestions that they had in there for especially recruitment, retention. But for going forward, but it also spurred thoughts, I think, as Elaine has shared about things that could be added to your discussion for your agency SWAT. So for our next step, we would take everything that we've listed in the strengths, those internal positive things, and then compare it to opportunity strategies. Which of the company's strengths can be used to maximize the opportunities you've identified? So which of the company's strengths can be used to maximize the opportunities you identified. So you have two positives, external opportunities, internal strengths. So how can we maximize our strengths and to take advantage of the opportunities? So you have a lot of strengths. The strengths far outweigh anything you've listed, and weaknesses are, well, they don't far outweigh, but it looks like you have more strengths than weaknesses. Maybe not, but how can you take or maximize your diverse services, your SMEs, the training opportunities that you've listed, which I think was reinforced with the tuition assistance program, qualified staff, your academics, your fringe benefits, the impact that you're having in the community, all of these things. How can we maximize our strengths to take advantage, capitalize on these opportunities? Maybe how can we use our strengths to improve our partnerships, to create better social networks, to connect us with more people in our outreach and recruitment, to promote the agency, to take advantage of medical partnerships, to take advantage of the staff trainings and expand knowledge of staff, to empower staff, to take advantage of the agency's position nationally in terms of being a leader, to better be more streamlined or provide clarity, or to maximize our strengths to better capitalize on the opportunity for job postings. You have most of this except for what we've shared. I've sent that to you this morning. How can we maximize? This is going to lead into our action plan. How do we maximize our strengths to identify opportunities, develop better opportunities?
I wonder we still have the RPI, which is the Rapid Processing Improvement System. That was like a system when we had basically what we're doing now. We have an idea and then we brainstorm and narrow it down to a specific process to answer that question.
Let me put this in chat real quick. Which of company strengths can be maximized? So repeat that for me, Carlina.
In the past, when we had, let's say, a situation or we wanted to streamline a process, for example, support employment, which was a big convoluted system, we used something called the Rapid Process Improvement. And it was to narrow down a very complex problem and streamline in a very simple way. So maybe we could, and I know some of us here, Sandy.
Like one of our management team, state office would sponsor it. And they would say, okay, this is an issue we have. What are our resources? And we would kind of attack it like this.
It was pretty effective. And it was using, we figure out what our weaknesses were and our strengths, and we kind of focus on what that weakness was and it kind of empower that weakness. So our load was not as, so the load was even and everybody was doing their part and it was effective and spread out evenly, so to speak.
So I think that's a great point. So one of the things here that you'll probably find yourself in a similar situation once you develop this plan and recommendation to your leadership team. They did tell me that you all would be invited to join. I want to say it's called a Tiger Team. I'm not sure if that's the correct acronym, or the correct title, where you would be in a process to work alongside other leaders in your organization to see this action, this recommendation forward. So it would be similar to your RPI process that you already have identified in your agency. But to get there, we would need to start by saying which of these strengths that we've already listed. So how do we, so the goal would say, maybe we want to say, let's take our subject matter experts, our skilled subject matter experts, and we can do A, B, C, or D to take advantage of this opportunity, more partnerships, staff trainings, create our own internal fill in the blank. You see where I'm going there with that? So the goal is to take these specific things you've listed, unless you want to add something else to this list, but the goal is to take what you've listed as your strengths and to say, how can we use this strengths? I'm trying to copy this. I don't know if it'll let me, to maximize our opportunities. So
one thing, I'm thinking I'm understanding where you're at currently and what we're doing. But one of the things
let me clarify for you. We're taking what we've listed in our strengths, our weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and now we're going to make an action plan. Because we've listed all these things, but now we need to create a plan of how do we maximize opportunities, how do we minimize threats? And the way we do that is to take the strengths and to maximize opportunities, take our strengths to minimize threats, take our weaknesses to think about are there anything we need to do differently to create better opportunities, or to minimize our weaknesses to avoid any threats.
Dr. Freeman, this is
oh, wait,
Freeman.
just
okay, so what the reason I asked is because I'm trying to remember if we have it listed, but just I think we do. But one of the things I know our BRCs are working on and our community outreach is just awareness. Our services are built on people coming in with a disability requiring assistance to get gainfully employed or to advance in employment and maintain. So one of the problems that has always been across the board is just community awareness of what we are and what we do. So when we changed from DOORS to TWC, there was a big lag in people coming in. And so with our BRCs and our outreach coordinators getting out in the community, one of the things I feel like we could do that we're still not really doing is we're social. So we have social media accounts, but they're very limited. But what happened to traditional people letting us know in more traditional ways, such as making sure we have maybe some buy-in on radio where we have a little small snippet, advertisement, making sure that our cards and stuff are available at other agencies that may do entitlement services, although we're not entitlement, just making sure that they know who we are and they can refer their customers to us.
Okay, thank you for that. So I would push back and say, I hear what you're saying, but which of your strengths are you capitalizing to better you do advertising outreach? Because you identified in your opportunities, social networks, social media, social networks as a way of, as an opportunity, more awareness in the community. Are you suggesting use our subject matter experts, training qualified staff, or something else from that list of strengths to take advantage of that, to maximize that opportunity. And then someone else had a comment.
I had a comment.
Go ahead.
Well, Mr. Robin, the agency is the BRCs and the COAs. They just recently trained us to they recognize that gap what she was talking about. Not able to do it just in traditional ways, but because before in the past we couldn't even speak to the media. We had to run that up the chain of command, and by the time we got a response, it was weeks later, and then the news reporter left within minutes. He's like, "Well, I can't," the question wasn't there. We couldn't even publicize, but they had just recently trained us all within the last month and a half, the COAs and the BRCs and the DRDs to speak to the media immediately. So we in Houston, we're actually doing that right now. So now the COA is on the afternoon news. She's talking about VR services. She's giving out the phone numbers. And that's more I think of what she was talking about. So I think the agency is working on that, and I think that was fantastic. We've been wanting that since the DARS days, since DBS days. And finally, we got it where somebody at a local level can immediately, if a counselor has something, we can sprint over there and talk on the radio about our services without any consequences of we're doing something wrong, because we're locally trained to do it now.
That's great.
I just wanted to add that in there. It's doable now. And I see quick results. The COA here, she was on TV last week and it went fantastic. Immediately the referrals started going up just because she was on there talking about our services that we have. So and that's just a little bit. I don't want to get into the duties that we both have, but I think just the way things are going, it's working, but it just takes a long time, and that's just the frustrating part. But they're aware. I think our chain of command are aware of what's going on, what's needed. It's that whole process of getting it to us. By the time they get it to us, they get the software to us. The software is expired. It's like they don't even use that anymore. We're on something else. Or by the time we get the function or the thing that we need, it's kind of over with. I think they're getting better at that. I think COVID, the whole pandemic helped business people realize certain things, how things needed to be expedited, and they need to be preempted before it even happens. Okay, you know what? Let's do telework before this even happens, instead of wait till it happens and then they find out, oh, how are we going to do this? So I think COVID taught a lot of business-minded people how to do things. And so I'll just
Thank you, Fernando. Let's see. So I'm gonna mute Elaine. So we are kind of at our time right now. So what we'll do is, as Dr. Robinson suggested in the chat, we'll put it on the table, and I'll ask that to be part of your homework, to take what you've listed in your strengths and capitalize on your, to maximize the opportunity. So let me show you the table again. My Word shut down on me while y'all were talking, so I had to get that back up. So too much going on my screen. So the questions, I'll list strengths and opportunities side by side in the table. Your goal would be to answer the question from the list of strengths, how can you maximize your opportunities? Okay, what you've listed in strengths, what's on the paper, how can you maximize what's the opportunities you've listed? The next one, you'll look at strengths side by side to threats. How can you use your company's strengths to minimize threats? Threats are external, they're negative. Internal, what actions can you do? What actions can you take to minimize your company's weaknesses using the opportunities you've identified? So think about all these weaknesses because your goal, you want this to be an agency where you're going to spend the next 50 years of your life working. Well, in order for you to do that, you need to minimize these weaknesses. You've listed quite a few. How can you minimize these weaknesses to take using the opportunities that you've identified. And then how can you minimize the company's weaknesses to avoid any potential threats in your future? Minimize threats, minimize weaknesses, minimize threats, the last one. So we'll put it in a table for you. And then your goal would be by the deadline of, I think it's May, the week before our next class, to send me back those suggestions, okay? Keep in mind, this is brainstorming session and all ideas are on the table. So when you're brainstorming, don't think in terms of that won't work or we're already doing that. Just think of, put it on the list. There may be a better way that we can do something. All right, so even though that you may think that it's been addressed, seeing it again may create more urgency to get it addressed a little quicker. So all ideas are on the table. Don't minimize any thought or suggestion that comes to mind. Put it down. All right, so we're at 10:55. We're going to take a 10-minute break and we'll be back at 10:55 Eastern time. I'm sorry, I'm at the CSAVR conference. So that whole time zone shift is created a little bit of cognitive dissonance for me. So we'll take a 10-minute break and come back at 11:05. No, 10:05 your time, Central Time.
10:05 for us and 9:05 for Brandon.
11:05 for Fernando.
Oh, wow.
I'm joking.
But you're not in 11:05.
All right.
Are you in Eastern time, Fernando?
No, I'm just joking. with
He's
you.
way down there, I bet.
I'm a jokester.
So thank you all. We'll take a quick break.
Okay.
And say welcome back to everyone. And thank you all again for being with us for this session on leadership in VR. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Veronica Jackson, who is going to share with us defining and understanding leadership styles.
Thank you, Robin. Hopefully over the break, you completed the quiz. If you didn't, then hopefully you're encouraged to do that by the information I'm going to share with you today. So again, my name is Veronica Jackson, and a little bit about me. Preferred pronoun, she, her, hers. I'm a research associate and leadership trainer at UA Currents, a business owner and certified life coach, and I'm passionate about leadership development and helping others find their why. People always tell me that's cliche, but I really do believe that our why, the reason we do what we do, shows up differently, right? So if I know why and how you show up, I'm better equipped to work with you and do great work alongside of you. My motto is to lead with love and energy. So it's no surprise that Robin chose me to talk about love and love languages today, but really our love language is our appreciation language, how we want to be celebrated, how we want to be shown that we are seen, that we are heard, that we are valued, and that we belong in a place or a space, right? So that's important. It's important to pay people what they're worth. So let's put that out there. That's really important, right? But once you get the pay right, then you got to make sure they want to stay there. You got to make sure that they feel connected, that they feel as though they matter in the workplace. And so the overall goal of what we're going to do today is to give you another tool or resource to understand not only your colleagues, but those that you might be managing at your agency, to ensure that you have a different language to speak with them to make sure they feel appreciated, right? That's the overall goal. So the quiz or survey talks about love, but I want you to think about love as appreciation and celebration as well when you're thinking about the 5 love languages, okay? All right, so icebreaker, I love icebreakers. The picture on the screen is a blurry image of a city skyline, probably somewhere like New York City. And the person is holding a magnifying glass on one little spot of that city skyline. And that's the piece that you can see clearly, right? So for this activity, we're calling it Picture This, and we're going to create a picture together. So to create this picture, you need something to write with or draw with, something to write on or draw on, and we're going to go through 9 steps to create a picture, right? Again, picture this. And while we're going through the 9 steps, you cannot ask questions. Your goal is to take the information given to you during my instructions and complete your picture. Again, something to write with or draw with, something to write on or draw on for this activity, Picture This. And as you gather those materials, since some of you don't have your cameras on, if you'll give me a thumbs up, just to let me know you got your stuff, and we'll move forward with the activity. Also, I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, and the weather has gone from spring, summer, to fall, winter in the matter of the last few days. So I'm sipping on water and I have a haul in my mouth. So excuse me if that comes flying out, right? Okay, are we ready? All right, so again, there are 9 steps of this activity, and I'm going to read each step twice just to make sure that you're able to hear it. And again, your goal is to take the information given to you and draw your picture, okay? Okay. First step, draw a medium-sized circle in the middle of your paper, or on your screen, or on your sticky note, or on the back of the receipts that you're using, okay? Draw a medium-sized circle in the middle of your paper. Step 2, draw a medium-sized square below the circle, but have the top of it touch the bottom of the circle. Draw a medium-sized square below the circle, but have the top of it touch the bottom of the circle. Step 3, draw a medium-sized heart in the square. Draw a medium-sized heart in the square. Step 4, draw 2 smaller rectangles, one on each side of the square. Draw 2 smaller rectangles, one on each side of the square. Step 5, draw clusters of wavy lines above the circle, but have the wavy lines touch the circle. Step 5, draw clusters of wavy lines above the circle, but have the wavy lines touch the circle. Step 6, draw a medium-sized triangle above the circle, touching the wavy lines. Draw a medium-sized triangle above the circle, touching the wavy lines. Step 7, draw a small triangle in the center of your medium-sized circle. Draw a small triangle in the center of your medium-sized circle. Step 8, draw an arc which curves up below the small triangle. Draw an arc which curves up below the small triangle. Is it Carlina? Carlina, your face is like, what? What? Then step 9, draw 2 small circles above the small triangle, one slightly to the right and one slightly to the left. Draw 2 small circles above the small triangle, one slightly to the right and one slightly to the left. And I'll put the instructions up for a second just so you can see them and see if you possibly missed anything. But what did you draw? What did you create? Anybody willing to show their picture by holding it up to the camera? Turn your camera on for a second just so we can see what you created.
Mm.
Mm? Who said, mm?
It's like Charlie from that little cartoon. That was
Oh.
Charlie, like, color me purple, color me blue. That's
Oh, Brandon, wait, Brandon, what did you draw? If you unmute and describe your drawing to us, what did you draw?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut anyone off. Kind of reminds me of like a mouse with some whiskers, and then like it looks like a first, second, and third place with like the boxes at the bottom. I don't know, kind of like a. Let me see if I can turn off the blur. Sorry about that.
And you drew on your phone. What did you use to draw on your phone?
This app called Freeform.
Okay, Freeform. Thank you. Someone was talking before Brandon, and I missed who that was. Who was that?
Monica?
yeah. Oh, so I have a 6-year-old, and there was one time she was watching Charlie, and so Charlie's all like shapes and stuff like that. And so I kind of feel like that's what I actually use paper. I went old
Okay.
school. I don't know if you can see him. Can you see him? It almost looks like Charlie. No?
Kind of.
Ugh. I don't know how to make it better.
Your
I'll
camera
take a
is
picture
blurry.
and I'll upload it into the chat.
That'd be great. Anybody else? What did you draw? It's Carlina, right? Carlina, what did you draw?
I don't know what this is. My interpretation of what you said.
Where's your arc that curves up?
I was like, how do I was trying to visualize the arc.
Okay, so how was that activity?
I need clarification,
Need clarification?
but it was
Tell me
fun.
more.
I thought it was fun.
You thought it was fun?
Yeah.
Okay, how did you feel after seeing other people's picture?
I think everyone interpreted information differently.
Everyone interpreted it differently, okay? Anybody else? Elaine, why do you think everyone interpreted it differently?
Can we see some of the others again?
Okay.
Sandy, where's yours? I want to see yours. And
Yeah,
Terrence.
I uploaded mine, but I didn't make that comment, Miss Jackson.
I know, I was asking.
Say it one more time. I was uploading my picture, and I
Okay, I
guess
see
it
it.
kind of looks like a person is what I got, with a frown on their face, because that's how I drew my arc. I didn't know if it was Noah's Ark or a so I have a frown on my and that's where my expression actually is in here. That's where my wrinkles are, because everything's expression in my right here.
Yeah.
So it's a picture.
One looks like a lamp on an end table.
Yeah. But it has a big heart. It has a big heart and some curly hair that sometimes goes crazy, and kind of a picture of me.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? Why did we interpret the information the way that we interpreted it?
I think it was just because of what you had mentioned, the square, the circle. We know all of that as kids. You learn rectangle and all of that stuff. So that's what kind of appealed to me, was I knew the shapes.
You knew the shapes, right? Until we got to arc, and then I saw a lot of frowned up faces, right?
Yep.
So how does this apply to how we navigate the world around us?
Very much. We're dealing with people and their perceptions and their realities and how we interpret, and so For me, I've learned that I really have to double check to make sure I'm on the same page with people and I'm interpreting what, or understanding what they're trying to convey to me. So I want to clarify. So I was like, that arc part threw me off because of my idea, okay, what is my interpretation of the arc and what is your interpretation of the arc? And I want to make sure I put it in the right place. So that's what my perception of it.
So you were considering my feelings while drawing your picture?
Your interpretation of the arc, because in my mind I was thinking Noah, and now how do I, build the arc? So.
Thank you. And that's exactly what I wanted you to get out of this activity, right? So every day we are walking around with our perceptions, our tools, our resources for how we navigate the world, right? And oftentimes we expect others to navigate it in the same way. And when we do that, we end up creating opportunities for oops and ouch moments, right? Because we are hoping that that person will show up as us, and we are not the same. Robin and I have worked together for a long time, and we work completely differently. Robin will have an idea and let's start it tomorrow. And I'll be like, well, actually, let me get a better picture of this idea because I can't start tomorrow. I need a blueprint, I need a plan. And oftentimes for us, that creates ouch moments because we show up differently. But over time, what we've learned to do is to, like Carlina was trying to do with my interpretation of this drawing, is to think about how the other person's thinking, right? So that we can make sure we come to the table to work together. We have a shared vision, shared language, shared goals, shared values. And this is what my hope is for this activity, the assessment that you completed and some of the activities that we're going to do together today. Is that you walk away with shared language with one another, and that you understand each other's love language or language of appreciation, right? So thank you so much for that activity. And for those of you who uploaded your picture in the chat, so I can look at those later. But every time we do that activity, the arc piece throws people off, and math people get really upset with me. And I'm not a math person, so I don't completely understand that, but I do try to be open to understanding that, right? So our main goal during our time together is understanding our personal style of leadership and why it matters. We're going to review the 5 love language assessment. We're going to deepen our awareness of emotional bank accounts, how they impact motivation, engagement, and workplace connectivity, and help us to really think about how we can build more cohesive teams in the workplace. Again, thank you. All right, so your role as a leader. What you've already done in this activity was recognize the lens from which you see things might not be the same as how the next person sees things. And that's important to take into consideration because we must demonstrate vulnerability in the workplace. I can't trust you or build trust with you if I don't know that you're being vulnerable with me, that you're being genuine with me, that you're showing up as your authentic self, right? Which gives me the opportunity and the freedom to show up as my authentic self. I am, as I already said, the loving, energized person, but I talk with my whole body, my whole face, my hands. Right now I'm holding a hand under my leg just to make sure I'm just not doing too much, but that's all of me, right? And for someone who doesn't show up in that way, that can be a lot. I am a lot, right? But I am grateful for workplace safety in which I can show up as my lot without feeling like I have to play small, right? And so we should be helping everyone to feel like that in the workplace, because when we do that, that's where that feeling of belonging comes from. That's what makes people want to show up at work. So let's get into behavioral profiles. Some of this I've already said. Behavioral profiles help us to increase our understanding of one another. They help us to recognize how to connect, and creates a common vocabulary or language of understanding for one another. So any thoughts about that and why behavioral profiles are important? Robin was having a conversation with someone when I got on about why they don't feel like they always work. But I will tell you, I did the 5 love languages quiz when I got married back in 2012. And here I am a decade later, and my answers are still the same. My love languages are still the same. So this is one that doesn't really shift. So why do you think behavioral profiles are important?
I think for me, knowing who I am and how I see myself is important for me to with me knowing that my perception can be skewed. Knowing myself and my own character defects allows me to work in a positive way to shift from that. Like we just did something as a group with my workmates, and it says that inherently I am a specific type. But when people meet me, they never see that specific type. And that's because I work diligently on trying to make sure my teammates and my coworkers and the people that are around me are getting what they need versus what inherently works best for me. Like I'm very analytical, very data driven. It's just this. But my goal is to always come across where I'm like animated and very outgoing and very social and very inclusive. And it's very important to me because I know it's important in the workplace. And so I work on that versus staying in my own comfort zone of just being very data driven, like it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G all the time. And in order for me to give that to somebody, I have to know who I am. So I'll know what I have to change about me to give them what they need.
Thank you. What's your first name?
Tara.
Tara, thank you for that. Self-awareness is very important. And that's basically what you just spoke about, right? I have to know me so that I can know what my moments are in the workday that might not be the best time to have a conversation with someone. I have to know that when I show up in a room, in a space, this is the energy in which I'm giving off. And I want to make sure that people feel like they can connect with me, that they can talk to me, right? Like I said, I talk on my whole face. So if I just walked in at 8 o'clock, this face says a whole lot of things that are not true. But I have to be aware of that, because if I'm in that space and I walk in like that, your perception and what you see and what you feel from that moment with me can change how you show up with me for the rest of the day, right? And Robin and I used to be in an office together where everyone came in the morning and they gathered in one place and they chatted about whatever. That's not my jam. Give me a good hour after I've checked my email and prepared for the day before we have that kind of connectivity, right? But at first glance, when I walked into that office, because the culture was one set up to where everybody gathered, then I looked like the odd man out. I looked like I wasn't a team player. I looked like I didn't want to connect with everyone. Meanwhile, at 9 o'clock, when I'm ready to talk, they're checking email now. So it's shifted, right? So that self-awareness is important, no matter if you're in the office face-to-face or in the virtual office. You want to make sure that you're self-aware enough to know how you show up and how you're perceived. So the language of love, or the 5 love languages, it's talking about love, but we want to talk about heart, because heart matter, right? If I don't make you feel important, if I don't make you feel seen, then it's going to be hard for you to feel like you belong in that agency or organization. The quote on the screen is from Gary Chapman. And as you know, the book was written in 1992, and it says different people with different personalities give and receive love in different ways. By learning to recognize these preferences in yourself and others, you can learn to identify the root of your conflicts, connect more profoundly, and truly begin to grow closer. So again, we're thinking about how our differences show up and figuring out ways that we can celebrate our differences and make sure that everybody feels like their differences are important and that they bring something great to the table. So let's look at the 5 love languages, or languages of appreciation. The first one is tangible gifts. And the word is tangible because we don't want you to just give people something just so you can feel like you did something great. We want you to give them a gift that really speaks to them, right? Again, we're talking the language of love and appreciation. So make sure that gift speaks to the person. The second one is words of affirmation. Words of affirmations is my husband's. It took me a long time to really understand this one, but they want to be appreciated. They want to know that you truly see them and value them, and you're willing to say that out loud. Don't just assume that they know. Physical touch is mine, and you wouldn't know that. If you met me, I give off this very much don't touch me kind of vibe, but that's a whole nother story, but it really is my love language. And Robin has a very unique way of speaking that language for me, to me. She sent me gifts that were fuzzy, things that I could touch, things that make me feel like I'm being hugged without being hugged in the time of COVID. That's the way you speak that language. Quality time is all about those one-on-one moments, and then acts of service are all about helping, showing up for that person in those moments where they know they might need help, but they're not going to ask for it because they're always the helpers, right? So let's go a little deeper into tangible gifts. Anybody have this as their top love languages? If you did, thumbs up or just something so I know this is you that I'm talking about. Okay. So when it comes to tangible gifts, don't just reserve this for when someone does something directly for you. Give them a gift whenever they do something that impresses you, right? Tangible gift, people need you to be thoughtful. So your gift should have thoughtfulness sprinkled throughout it. You give gifts on special occasions. These can be handwritten notes, small tokens, buy them lunch, give them your time or reward, or some of those bonuses that you were talking about earlier. I still don't really understand the swing shift leave policy you were talking about, but that's a gift to someone who has a gift love language. Now, what this group does not need, they don't need you to forget special occasion, and they don't need dutiful, unenthusiastic gift giving, just giving them something for the sake of saying that you gave them a gift. And no one said this was their top one, so let's go on to the second one. Words of affirmation. Your words matter. Every word matters. Every word matters. And so when you're talking to someone who's a words of affirmation person, you want to make sure that you sprinkle kindness through whatever you're saying to them, right? Even if it's constructive feedback, you still want to be very intentional about how you say what you say. Is this anybody's top language? Robin, are you words of affirmation? No?
That was my top.
That was your top? Okay.
Yeah, it's Fernando. That was my top. I was kind of surprised, but yeah, I guess I need that to move forward on a daily basis. I mean, I guess it's who I am.
That's who you are. Thank you, Fernando. So most words of affirmation people need that praise to be consistent and often. And they don't want you to just compliment their outcome. They want you to compliment their efforts. And it could be simple as thank you. It could be kind words of encouragement or appreciation. It could also be a listening ear. Examples of words of affirmation, just thank you, those compliments, celebrating their talents or their hard work. You can do that with a note or a text, and just publicly saying great job, right? And that does seem simple, but for someone who's a words of affirmations person, that's a lot. Now, what they don't need the assumption that they already know you're proud of them. So if you have a colleague or a coworker who does great work all the time, but you never tell them, and then you finally do, and it's like they have their whole face lights up, their whole energy changes, they're probably a words of affirmation person. Not appreciating or recognizing their efforts, that is definitely a withdrawal for this group, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. And then emotionally harsh words, right? If you're harsh in your tone or the way in which you respond to a words of affirmations person, it definitely sticks with them far longer than you think. Robin, your hands up.
Yeah, just to say Javier did put in the chat that his is words of affirmation.
Thank you, Javier. And so this one was really hard for me to sometimes navigate because I normally just say what I'm thinking and feeling, right? But when you're dealing with a words of affirmations person, you have to be intentional with your words and how you say those words, because again, they're going to hold on to those, right? Whether they're positive or negative. So think about how you speak when you're speaking to a words of affirmation person. So you know 2 of your colleagues already are words of affirmation people. The next one is physical touch. Now, physical touch can be a tricky one in the workplace. I always feel like consent is important. So if you know your colleague is a physical touch person and you find out today, that doesn't mean the next time you see them run up and hug them or get into their personal space. You got to be very careful with that, right? But there's all types of nonverbal body language that emphasizes gratitude and appreciation. The nods. Carlina, every time I look up and you're smiling, I feel like I've been hugged. I've been hugged through the screen, right? So it doesn't always have to be physical, as in putting your hands on a physical touch person for them to feel touched, right? 2 words, high five. If something is great, offer a high 10, something that makes them feel like, yes, put some energy behind it. That really goes a long way for a physical touch person. So again, that non-verbal body language to emphasize or reinforce their presence, handshakes, fist bumps, pats on the back, consensual, of course. A touch plus affirming remark. Like when you shake their hand, you need to hold on to it and be like, that was a great presentation, Veronica. My mind is blown. I'll never be the same. Like put some emphasis on that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the cozy blanket that Robin sent me, right? She wasn't physically touching me, but she gave me something that I could touch, that I could hold on to and wrap up with. My husband has stolen it. So Robin, if you want to send another one, please do. And then sometimes for physical touch people, just being available, just your presence is like, I feel close to you. Is anyone a physical touch person? Okay. What they don't do. Go ahead, Robin.
The question is I wonder when you talked about that handshake, I think that's another area where you might have to be careful not to kind of rub. But anyway, like making eye contact with the person, would that be considered part of that physical touch?
For me, it is. And the reason being, it's kind of tricky because physical touch is my number 1 and quality time is my number 2. So that eye contact, you're looking at me, you're focused in on me, I get your undivided attention, right? So that one speaks to me on both levels. But you're right, even in the handshake part, you can ask someone, hey, I know physical touch is your love language. What does that mean for you? Does that mean you actually want to be touched? Or does that mean when I'm celebrating you, then whatever I celebrate you with should be something that you can feel or something that excites the senses, or smell or taste? You can ask those questions just to make sure that you're speaking their language in the way they want you to speak it and not how you're interpreting it. So that's a great point, Robin. This group doesn't need long periods without connectivity, right? They don't need cold body language or responses. So in the same way I said, I'm looking over here and I see you nodding, that feels good to me. On the other side of that, if you're like, what is she talking about? Oh, I have to clarify because I want to get back to the nodding because that feeds my love language, right? All right, quality time. Any quality time people? Yes. So with quality time people, time is valuable. Time is valuable to them. And so you giving of your time makes them feel important. And when you give your time, they don't just want you to be there. They want your undivided attention, that one-on-one time. See me, I'm sitting right here. For a quality time person, if you're in conversation with them and all of a sudden you pick up your phone and you start texting or doing whatever, you made a withdrawal with that group, right? Because here I am in your presence and something else is getting your time. So they want that one-on-one undivided attention. And you can give this after they've accomplished something. Take time to really sit down and talk through like what really worked with that project. How did you feel about the end result, right? That goes a long way for them. They need uninterrupted and focused conversation. They need face-to-face conversation with your whole attention. And so examples are of ways you can speak this language is take time to listen to them, show up on time, which is a big one for me. Thank them for their time, or do personal activities with them as a center. What this group does not need is distracted conversation. If we're in a conversation and you start doing something else, you lost me. I'm done with the conversation. I'm working on it though. They don't need long periods without one-on-one time, right? So this group, again, their time is valuable, your time is valuable. So you giving your time to them goes a long way. Any quality time people want to say anything about that? Only saw Carlina, and anybody else quality time?
Quality time is important because time is precious, and that's something that you can never get back. And so for my boss, I can send an email, I can do a chat, but I really value that. Even if it's 5 minutes, I want, instead of a phone call, chat, or email, I want that one-on-one. It's very important to me. So just very valuable to me.
Thank you. Now, did you know that before doing the quiz?
It's a kind of a need that I had. So it just, even if it's once a week, I wanted to have some type of exchange just to meet my need and see where they are. So yeah, but today was confirmation.
Okay, thank you. All right, our final one is acts of service. Acts of service is all about lending a hand. I saw a few people. Yes, this is a big one. And for acts of service, people, actions speak louder than words. Don't tell me that you're here to support me. No, show me. Show me you're here to support me. After a meeting, these tend to be your people who are cleaning up, who are thinking about the next thing that needs to be set up for a training or presentation. And so they really do appreciate it when others go out of their way to alleviate their workload. So for acts of service people, simple things like asking them, what tasks or projects are you working on and how can I help with that? Offer to help, take tasks off their to-do list before they ask you, because sometimes they also have a hard time asking for help. And then providing benefits like the ones you've already mentioned are important for acts of service people. Give me the opportunity to have flexibility in how I show up. They don't need lack of follow through, ignoring requests for help, and to be left alone to do all the work. And I did see someone's hand up.
Yes, Ms. Jackson, that's me. Oh, yeah.
That's you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, perfect. I've been having a lot of problems with the internet, so I've been in and out, so I'm sure I've missed a lot of good information. I have a question for you. I was surprised with words of affirmation, not totally surprised, but I was. But I'm thinking this, so this is a question for you. Maybe Dr. Freeman can, or just anybody here, because I'm thinking in my case, I actually do need those words of affirmation. I tend to be very insecure in many respects. So that is a validation and something that I do need, because now that gives me that reassurance that I'm right, because of my insecurities. So I'm just wondering, as I look at all these 5 here, I look at could it be that those percentages are what we're looking at, that we have an inherent need, or we need something, and we're looking at that satisfaction coming from somebody else, such as in the words of affirmation that I need to satisfy my insecurities, that would be one. And then the quality of time, the having to be one-on-one, could that be something more profound psychologically? Or maybe I'm going too deep into it, but I'm seeing other things in my percentages that the suit fits me, as they say. What I'm saying, I'm just projecting my own flaws and weaknesses, I guess, here. But does it go that deep, or am I just overthinking it?
No, it does go that deep. So your top 2 were words of affirmation and quality time. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. So what you're speaking to is exactly why we're talking about love languages, or the language of love, or language of appreciation. It often speaks to those empty spaces in us, right? So if you need to feel validation, if you need to feel seen, if you need to feel understood, then that is deep. That's a heart matter for you. So then when someone says, thank you so much for sharing that, what you just shared was really a great takeaway from me, and a great lead into what we're about to talk about next. Like that, you had a little spark when I just said, thank you for sharing that. So that does speak to the place in which those happy hormones are released when something of that nature happens for you. So a supervisor having one-on-one time with you and then telling you you're doing great work this quarter. You know, I thank you so much for bringing your skill of organization to the workplace, right? I value how you show up, right? That speaks to you. Like, you want to smile a little bit. I saw that. And that's what this is about. There's so many different types of behavioral profiles and assessments, but what we want to get to is, what's that thing that someone can do that makes you light up? Because when we are lit up in the workplace, we are better equipped to do great work, right? We feel like we're somebody special because we are. And I think oftentimes when we think about work, we forget to make people feel special. We don't think we have the capacity to do that. But what this does is give us a language in which we can all share to understand how to do that without feeling icky, because this can feel icky, but you need to feel icky. That vulnerability is really what's going to build trust amongst your team, amongst your colleagues, amongst the individuals you supervise, and even telling your manager how you need to feel that. Like you just said, I need those words of affirmations. Or Carlina said, I need that one-on-one time with you. You know, you might think I'm working from home and I'm the happiest person ever, but I still need to check in with you via Zoom for 15 minutes, just so you can tell me what the primary goal should be for this week, right? And then I can move on. We can talk again the whole week, but I need you to make a deposit for me so that I know that I'm doing great work, right? So that was deep, but the goal is for it to be deep. So thank you for sharing that and for being vulnerable.
Thank you.
All right, so that leads into our discussion. I would love if you would unmute and share out loud just so that we can hear one another. But I really want to know, what is your primary and secondary language, and how do you see that showing up in the workplace? Are there any surprises about what you learned? And then thinking a little further, how can you communicate with your colleagues about how to speak your language? Anybody willing to share?
I just put in the chat that now I'm more aware to look and see who they are when they show up in their preferences, because I can spend mountain of time doing acts of service, but it might not be what that person needs. They may just need that email, which I've been working on it, making sure I'm telling people when they're knocking it out the park, when they look nice, you know, just real simple things that I know when I hear them, they make me feel nice, warm and fuzzy. And it's just not realizing that even though we can demonstrate all areas, just making sure that I'm not stuck in what makes me feel good, that I'm looking to see what make others feel good.
Thank you. That's a great perspective. And one of the reasons that we're doing this one is that the quiz is free. That means when we get done today, you can send this out to your staff and say, hey, I'd like to know a little bit more information about how I can show you that I appreciate you. So will you take this quiz and just give me your top love language and how you would like it to show up, right? After a meeting or after you've done a great job, would you prefer a thank you note? Would you prefer a gift or a small trinket to celebrate you? How would you like me to celebrate you so that I can make sure that you feel seen, heard, and valued in the workplace? So thank you for sharing that. Anybody else?
That's kind of along the lines of me. I'm acts of service and words of affirmation, but I tend to do that for people. So like you said, they may not really want a thank you note. They may, they may just want a words of affirmation rather than a little thank you note that they're just going to toss away, maybe, but I feel that I tend to, those two are my top two, because I tend to do that for other people, and I like other people to do that for me. So it kind of like hand in hand, that's what I take from it.
And that's a great perspective, Elaine, right? Because oftentimes we treat others the way that we want to be treated. And that's another aha I hope everybody received from doing the quiz, right? This is how I'm showing up because this is how I want you to show up for me. And that's not always how it works. I'm the quality time and physical touch person. My husband is acts of service and words of affirmation. We're living in two totally different worlds. So when I'm smothering him with time and attention, oh, he hates it, right? But I could go in there and cook his favorite meal, and it's like I've given him $1 million because that's speaking to his language. So it's important to understand that your top two languages are how you're showing up, and they might be in direct contrast to how that person wants to receive that appreciation. So if you're giving out gifts and people are like, I don't even like that, then you might want to ask them, like, what do you really want? How do you want to be appreciated? Because apparently we're not speaking the same language. Robin, you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm going to start by saying I'll send you my list of what my favorite meal is so you can prepare that for me the next time you're in town. I think one of the hardest lessons I learned as a supervisor, as a manager, is everybody's not the same. And that while it's okay, I only need you to tell me once I'm good, and using that approach with everyone else you can't be successful in that way. Acts of service is my number one, but for Peggy, it was quality time. And if I'm a go, 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 let's get her done type person, that means I've got to change my whole approach on when I'm in contact with Peggy. Like, she just wants me to sit down and talk with her, and it could be about anything. And that's going to make her feel valued, that I see her in the workplace. So learning that is a really important lesson, that we have to be willing to shift how we show up for each of our colleagues.
Yes, and so that go, go, go for a person who's quality time makes me feel like you're just running over me and you don't want to connect with me, or you don't like talking to me. Like, Robin, can we slow down? You know,
we can talk and we can spend time together while we're doing, right?
No. But that's exactly how it is. Like, you're trying to get work done and you're not understanding why that person is having a hard time being motivated or engaged in whatever that work is you're doing. And sometimes that's because you're not speaking the same language, you know? So it's important to understand that you have to be aware of how that person wants to be treated, so that you can ensure that they feel like they belong in that space, whatever you're doing, whatever the activity, so they can feel like they belong at the table. Because if they don't feel like they belong, then they're not going to be engaged and they're not going to want to stay around. So, any other thoughts about your top two and any surprises or things you learned?
My top two were acts of service and quality time. Words of affirmation were third. And I'm kind of like Javi at first, thinking, yes, I need, I'm very hard on myself. I need those words of affirmation. So at first I was a little surprised that was third on the list. But then as I thought about it more, and, like the slide said, for acts of service, words are cheap. And so I think that, that did kind of make me realize, how true that is. Like, yes, I do still need those words of affirmation, but it comes down more to the acts of service and the quality time, because people can say, I appreciate you, or I'm going to do this, but then if there's no follow through, or I'm not getting that time, or, that help when I need it, because I'm awful about asking for help if I need it, that is really what is more beneficial to me. And acts of service is definitely what I do for other people to show love. So it was very, very interesting. Very, very good and insightful.
Thank you. I wrote that down. Words are cheap. All right. So a little bit more about our languages and how they can show up, how we can make sure that we are speaking them in the workplace. For tangible gifts, as a manager or team member, I suggest keeping an ongoing wish list or like list, right? So if you know what that person likes, their favorite candy, someone sent me a really extravagant box of things. Someone I asked to mother me, that's a whole nother story. really extravagant gifts in the box. And the thing that I loved most was that she put my favorite candy from Arkadelphia, Arkansas in the box, right? And I'm sure she was like, wait a minute, I spent a lot of money on those other things, but that's not what spoke to me. What spoke to me was that she remembered my favorite candy. So choose gifts that the receiver will genuinely value. And you can do this by paying close attention to their interest. And then make sure you communicate the meaning behind the gift and tell the person why you're giving them that present. Power phrases are things like, I saw this and thought of you because, or this gift, whatever it is for the amazing work that you're doing or that you did on A, B, C, and D project. Words of affirmation. As a manager, identify specific actions that you appreciate and share with them. Those specific pieces matter because you want to make sure they feel like they're at the center of that word or phrase that you're using to celebrate them. Focus on, as team members, focus on how they help you to become better at what you do. So Joseph, thank you so much for all your organization skills. Because you are so organized, it helps me to feel like I am showing up as my best self with the information that you've given me to present, right? Power phrases, I appreciate how you, thanks to your work, we, fill in the blank, the specific contribution you provided helped me or us by, or you excel at blank, and that helps me, us to do A, B, C, and D. When it comes to physical touch and speaking that language, as a manager or team member, consider giving sensory-friendly gifts like snuggle blankets, squeeze balls, or gift certificates for a spa, or as a proxy for actual touch, right? Remember, this one can be tricky, but always get that consent or ask them what feels like touch to them without being touched. Power phrases, I'm sending you a virtual hug or high five. Those actually work for me. I don't know why, but they do. And so they might work for your physical touch people. You get a big pat on the back for fill in the blank. And again, reminder, this one's a little tricky. Quality time, giving someone your time as in letting them know you want to spend time with them, not that you have to spend time with them, okay? It's important to make sure they understand, I want to be in this meeting, not like bringing them into the room and being like, okay, we got 5 minutes. What do you want to talk about? Like that doesn't speak to quality time for that person. So as a manager, devote time to building team cohesion. This in itself could be a big deposit for a quality time person in your office. As team members, offer to have conversations face-to-face, either via live conferencing or in person. And power phrases are, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, or would you like to join me for this event, whatever that event is. When it comes to acts of service, as a manager, carry out simple, low-level tasks to help them focus on high-level projects. For example, if they're getting ready for a big presentation and they need supplies, maybe you go out and buy the supplies and say, hey, I've already done this piece for you, so you don't have to go out and run and complete that errand. As team members, pitch in without being asked, right? So that means you're required to have some intentionality around that. Power phrases for your acts of service people are, is there anything I could do for you that would make your work easier? Or I've got some time, I'd love to help. What would be the biggest help to you right now, right? So asking how you can help or being intentional and seeing where the help is needed. So with the 5 love languages, intentionality is important. It's all about your intent. And people want to feel like you're putting them at the center by choice, not by force. So when you're using the 5 love languages, we want to consider what brings out the best in others. You know, like I said earlier, ask people how they want to be celebrated. Using the 5 love languages demonstrates your willingness to create an inclusive work environment. And when we say inclusive, it means that we are celebrating the differences of one another. Use of the 5 love languages helps us to model the way for others. So for your team members and colleagues, if they watch you demonstrate that you're speaking the other person's love language, they're more likely to do the same. And then of course, it puts your leadership on display. So any more thoughts about the 5 love languages and what we've discussed so far before we take a break? I see one hand.
Oh,
Go
go ahead. Javier had his hand up.
Can y'all hear me? I have to ask because of the problems I'm having with internet. Yes, that's it. So I just wanted to, because I'm thinking as I'm hearing you, your explanation, and I'm, connecting with these 5 languages of love, I'm thinking of what can be done, because it's hard as a manager or supervisor to satisfy everyone and to know what clicks with everyone, what's going to be acceptable or not. So I'm thinking, in just an idea, I want your thoughts on this or opinion, because I'm thinking, okay, if I meet, let's say I'm your supervisor, Miss Jackson. So I meet with you and I take a small gift that contains words of affirmation. Thank you very much. I appreciate what you did. And then here's the gift. And then here's the just satisfy all 5 areas with that meeting, having that one-on-one 10 minutes to take you the prize or the gift and give you the affirmations and just do everything you mentioned already in that 10-minute meeting per se. Just quick to the point, but you went through all of them. Is that acceptable or not necessarily?
So if I have 10 staff members and I give each of them a box with fuzzy socks and something saying you're doing a great job, and let's see, which ones did I miss? That 10-minute meeting, you're saying if I speak to the 5 love languages in one piece for all of my staff, am I doing?
Individually, because those that want quality at time, I think I understood that they prefer the one-on-one. Am I correct?
Right.
Yes, so I'm thinking, is doing this one-on-one with every single one of the, let's say 10 people that you're supervising or managing, and does that weaken the strength of addressing all these 5 areas?
I think it depends.
More, because you're doing it with everyone type of thing.
If you're doing it with everyone, but everyone's getting the same thing, it's not intentional. It's I'm doing it out of, let me make sure I give everybody something, right? But if you're giving me a gift, the gift should be about something that I like or with me as a center. So I'm a music person. So if you're giving me a iTunes gift card for music, that's a gift that fits me, but it might not fit the next gift person because they might not even like music, right? So even in speaking the language, you still have to put that person as a center in order for them to feel seen, right? Does that make sense?
Tailored to and highlighting that which they mostly value.
Yes, that's exactly it. Tailored to and highlighting what they most value. I like that. That was a great phrase.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you. All right, well, we have a 15-minute break. Is that right, Robin? 15 or shorten it to 10, and then we'll come back and discuss emotional bank accounts. Right?
Good.
So that's 11:15, 12:15, and then what's the other time zone we're in? It doesn't matter. 15 minutes. 15 minutes, and then we'll come back and talk about emotional bank accounts. Okay, welcome back from your break. Hope everybody had a good 15-minute break. It's amazing how much you can get done in 15 minutes when you're in the middle of a Zoom meeting or a training and you have that 15-minute pause. So I hope you use yours well. At this section, or during this section of the training, we're going to talk about emotional bank accounts. Has anyone heard of emotional bank accounts before? No.
My 16-year-old talks about his emotional bank account all the time.
Really? What does he say?
He's drained. Just like, on the weekends or going to do stuff. A lot of times it refers to being around people at school too much. And then, not wanting to necessarily go do things with friends on the weekends, or just do something relaxing with family because his emotional bank account is drained.
It's drained. Oh, I'm so glad he has that language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, our emotional bank account is all about our account of trust, connection, and belonging instead of money, right? So like you just said, your 16-year-old says, I'm drained. A lot of us are drained because we don't have as many deposits as we have withdrawals. So this is a 7 habits for highly effective people or teams concept. And it's based on how you feel with one another. It grows when others make more deposits than withdrawals. And it tells us whether a person feels safe and secure in a space. So as you said about your son, at school, he is feeling drained, right? So he's asking for some of those family deposits to make sure that he can move forward and not feel like he is depleted, right, in whatever way. So our goal is to have more deposits than withdrawals. And what we've already talked about with our language of love and appreciation is how you can make meaningful deposits for your colleagues. So let's look at the account basics. Now, this account becomes important because when you're working with one another, we all want grace, right? We all want to be able to make those mistakes and be like, so sorry I did that, I'll do better, and have the person move on. But a person's ability to offer you that grace and move on is different depending on whether you have made more deposits or whether you made more withdrawals, right? So if your account is in the red, or if you've made more withdrawals and deposits in the account with someone, they tend to feel disconnected. They might even feel lonely, and they tend to question your intentions, right? So why am I giving you grace? You haven't been nice to me all week, or you haven't, shown me that you appreciate me. So why am I putting forth the effort when you're not? But if the account is in the black, which means that you've made more deposits, which means that there is more that you poured into that person, then during those moments of conflict or those oops and ouch moments, they tend to respond in a positive manner. They tend to say, well, Robin might have done A, B, and C, but I know her intentions, so I'm going to let that slide, right? So it's important to think about when we're celebrating one another, when we're trying to increase engagement and have cohesive teams. We have to make sure that the emotional bank account of our colleagues and our coworkers have more deposits than withdrawals. So when it comes to 7 habits of highly effective people, some of the things that they say, will be considered deposits into someone's emotional bank account are things like keeping promises, doing what you say you're going to do, right? Showing kindness, having sincere language, genuine language, and then being open to feedback. So when that person shares information with you, you're open to receiving it. Things that feel like withdrawals or breaking promises, right? If I tell you, hey, I'm going to do the second part of the presentation, and then the day of the presentation, I'm like, oops, I forgot, that's definitely withdrawal. Placing blame or pointing fingers, being defensive or not being open to feedback, right? So we want to make sure that we're giving more deposits than withdrawals when it comes to emotional bank accounts. So let's talk about your bank account. Now that I've introduced that concept, or you've heard more about that concept, how can others make deposits into your account? And then how do others make withdrawals? Like, what things do people do that make you feel like the account between you and them is in the negative? And then how can others protect your account, right? How can people make sure that you're in the positive more so than the negative? So anybody willing to share? How can others make deposits into your account?
I have one.
Okay.
Well, how can others make deposits into an account? One thing that I despise completely, I think it's very unprofessional and shows a lack of preparedness, lack of education. It just have all these negative connotations, in my opinion, is micromanaging. So that would be something that takes away. So that's the opposite of depositing into my account. So the good side, or what I do like that I consider a deposit, would be a believe in me. Believe that I know the process, believe that I know what I'm doing, believe and trust that I am an honest and professional individual who is here to get a job done. And if I need you, I will seek you out. Don't micromanage me. I hate that. It's just, it's so negative in so many respects. So yeah, that's the first one for me.
Thank you. That's a great example. And that's me too. Like, trust me to do the work and believe that you hired the best person for the job, right? So thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? What feels like a deposit or withdrawal for you?
I can share, Miss Jackson, if you don't mind.
Okay.
What feels like the deposit if someone asks, if I'm overwhelmed or if there's something that they can do to help, maybe help just make a task easier, that they know that I'm working on a big project or something big, because I don't reach out. I don't like to be micromanaged, but it's so weird. I guess that's my toxic trait. Maybe I don't ask for help. I'm not good about asking for help. But when someone comes to me and offers or asks, how can they help? Then that makes me feel better, because I don't want it to seem like I can't do the job, or that it's too much for me, even if it maybe is. So that's a deposit that I really appreciate when someone asks, how can I help you?
So are you hyper independent?
Yes, to a really, 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 really bad fault. Really, really bad. Like, I never ask for help, and all of my friends and coworkers are always fussing at me about that, because they can tell if I'm stressed or something, but I will go to the grave.
That's great.
Not ever saying I ask anybody for anything.
A deposit, that's a good point you bring, because with so many competing priorities, we have the phone, we have the email, we have Teams, and so we're like bombarded with information. I need this, I need this, I need this. And so sometimes one task that is more demanding than another, I just need a deposit for me is take time to sit back and think, because I want to be able to respond to the best of my abilities. So a deposit for me is, I don't have to reply immediately. I can take time to sit back and really think how I'm going to respond to that situation, so I can be so I can provide that customer or that vendor or that staff with a good response or outcome or solution to their problem. And that happened just recently with the situation I had. And because I took time to think about it and not respond immediately, because a lot of people have a sense of urgency, I want that immediately, then I think that's how I deposit and I help others, and that's showing kindness to others. And I'm valuing that quality time to myself.
Yes.
So, yep.
That's a great point. I was talking to my husband yesterday about the window of responses, right? So in my previous job, I felt like if someone sent me an email at 8 a.m., I had to respond by noon. I have to, but it always had me feeling anxious, because it's like, oh my God, I gotta get this done, da 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 da. So my new thing has become, thank you so much for your email. I'll respond when I've had time to create a thoughtful reply or response, right? Now, for people who want immediate response, that might not be speaking to them, but for me, give me time to process. For one, I tend to type like I talk, and that's not always professional. So I need an opportunity to type it out and then double check and make sure, I'm bringing my best self to the table. Or I can read something and my heart responds like, right? And then I can come back 30 minutes later and be like, oh, I just took it that way. That's not what they meant. That's not what they said, right? So like you said, that time for you is a deposit, because it gives you the opportunity to be your best self. When people take that away from you, then that's a withdrawal, because it's like you feel rushed, or you're probably overthinking like, man, I messed up with that piece. Let me, figure out how to fix whatever I said or did. So that's a great example.
Yeah, and that's pretty much me. I respond immediately. And so that's my trait that is not good. I'm the opposite. I want
I want to answer the email. I want it to be done. I want it to be, but it tends to, I started, somebody sends me an email and then I reply, and then it tends to just keep going. And so I don't like that at all. So just give me a plain answer, or let's just get together when I'm in the office. I'll come to you, we're all in the office on Wednesday. So, let's set a time to talk. I'd rather talk face to face than get an email. So I think that's why I'm so quick about answering the email. I want it gone, I want it done. But that's, I've learned that's not the way to approach it. And so Carlina, she gave me, both of you gave me a good idea. Just walk away from it for a little while. You don't have to answer immediately. Nothing is going to happen in a 15-minute break. To take time to process it and make sure I'm understanding it, number one. And like you said, not get emotionally, an emotional outburst because you think you're taking it the wrong way. And so that was great for me to hear from y'all. So thanks.
And it gives time to have more information on all the details of what's going on. So I can, because when I'm pressured, I don't remember everything. So just that stepping back really helps. Oh, that detail that if I would have responded right away would have made the difference of the outcome of the situation.
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
I didn't have time to think about everything. So I like Tara said, I have to like do my mental bank account, like this. Am I missing something? And then, okay, well, because I was rushed or pressured, I forgot that detail that made the difference in that response. And so it makes a difference for me.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Y'all.
Anybody else? What feels like a deposit for you? What feels like a withdrawal?
A deposit for me is if it's management or coworkers, checking on me, offering to help if it's needed. But also just checking on me, because our work is so difficult and demanding. And like Elaine said, I want to get things done right away, but then you get in this vicious cycle of constantly being in like almost a state of panic, trying to move so quickly because there's always so many things to do. So a deposit for me is definitely if someone does, like let's set up a time to chat or just to see how I'm doing, like personally, and just to have a few minutes, if it's a one-on-one or even like, in our staff meetings and things like that. That's really, I have found, because I've transferred to a new office a few months ago and things like that don't happen here, how much I need that.
That's a great point. Thank you, Jenny.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
Hi, this is Tara. For me, a deposit is, for me, I'm a big family lover. And so for me, my staff and everybody I work with, I try to feel a family bond towards them because I'm going to have more tolerance, more patience, and all of those things that I incorporate in having a family. And so for me, it's good it's a big deposit when they take time to just try to organically know me. And everything is not work driven. So when someone says, how the kiddos doing, it means mountains to me because that lets me know they see me as an individual, not just that workhorse that we tend to be when we're in that place of work and get it done, because we're trying to service people to the best of our ability. So most of us are really driven, really like always on the task or trying to think what they can do to improve and go forward with the next task. For me, a withdrawal is when somebody is combative with me for no reason outside of the scope of anything that I can see. The energy that I try to lead with is not aggressive. So when I get combative, aggressive behavior from a person, it really withdraws from who I am as a person and how I move forward with them, because now I'm wondering if I'm walking on a landmine.
Thank you. So that does go a long way when someone recognizes that you're more than just, well, your words were workhorse, but you're more than just that person who is sitting in the seat of service for others. Like, I have life outside of this. How's school going? Or how's that certification going that you're working on? When people recognize that you have other things in your life that are happening, that means a lot. And I think that means a lot to everyone, really, because that means you notice me, that you know more than just this single story of who I am, but you know the other layers of why I do what I do. So thank you for sharing that. So this is another piece that you could take back to your office and do with your staff, right? You have this presentation as a resource, but you could do the 5 love languages quiz, and then you come back and talk about emotional bank accounts and really ask each of your employees or coworkers, what feels like a deposit for you? Because oftentimes what feels like a deposit for me and what feels like a deposit for you might not be the same, right? So again, here's a place in which you can take this information and really get a better understanding of how to support your staff, or even telling your supervisor. Was that Javi at the beginning saying, now I don't want to be micromanaged. It's definitely a withdrawal for me, but I do need to know that you trust me to do the work, because if I know you trust me to do the work and you believe I can do the work, then I do believe I can do the work and I'm better equipped to do it, right? So that's important. Anybody else want to share before I go on deposit withdrawals and how can others protect your bank account? Okay, so let's talk about the 5-to-1 ratio. Now, this sounds like heavy lifting, but it is. For every 1 negative interaction you have with someone, it takes 5 of those to balance things out, right? That means if you have one conversation with a colleague where you're not so nice and you might be argumentative or you might be defensive, as we just talked about, and things kind of blow up, it takes 5 positive interactions to get you back on the same page. What does that tell you?
Avoid negativity, I guess. Because you
Avoid negativity.
Well, just the power of negativity.
The power of negativity, yes. Right, so the power of negativity, the way in which we show up in trying to connect with others, we have to be careful. We have to be intentional about our interactions and consider the impact of them, right? So in terms of the emails, if somebody sends you something and on first glance, your body says, oh my God, they're trying to fight me. There are fighting words in this, weaved in here somewhere. I feel it in my heart. And then you respond immediately with that same kind of energy. What is that going to do? That's going to create a negative interaction between you and that colleague, which is going to take 5 positive interactions to level the playing field, right? But if you take that time and be intentional with your response in the way in which you craft your words to ensure that you're not making them feel the same way they made you feel, you might get an email back saying, you know what, I just read back over what I said and I did not mean it that way, right? Or now I understand how that could have been perceived, right? So again, we have to be careful. We have to be intentional about the way that we interact with one another to ensure that we're making more deposits than withdrawals. And we think some of the small things that we do don't matter, but all of the positive interactions matter. Your head nods when I say something, I'm making me feel like I'm just like doing the best work ever. I appreciate that, right? That goes a long way. And so in the same way, if you're working on a project with your colleagues and you're like, you're doing great work. I know this is hard. I know this is stressful. I know you have 3 kids at home that are running around in the background because it's spring break, but you are doing the thing and you're doing it well. That goes a long way for someone who just wants to be recognized, right? And wants to be appreciated for the work that they're doing. Any other thoughts about the 5-to-1 ratio? Okay.
I think we
Okay.
have to acknowledge that some of our staff have more than 5-to-1 ratio issues.
What do you mean, Sandy?
As a supervisor, they may be on the wrong bus, that employee. So our supervisors may have difficulty, without being too flowery, to find that 5-to-1.
They might be on the wrong bus, as in they shouldn't be a part of the team or
Yeah.
the organization.
Yeah. I
Okay.
can certainly see that this is the way to go. I mean, but there are some communications that you may not have that luxury of 5-to-1.
This is true, because professional decorum is and morale is kind of, when it gets low, those things, that 5-to-1 ratio come kind of hard to keep up with.
Mhm. Any other thoughts on that? The 5-to-1 might not be feasible due to employees being on the wrong bus or the morale being so low that everything feels like a withdrawal. Is that what we're saying?
Well, not everything, but it's perceived.
Perceived.
Like, especially when you're, so much of my communication, even though I try to give it a positive spin, a lot of mine is about like corrective issues. And so I try to find a way to complement what they're doing right also, but a lot of it is data driven, and I don't have a choice. It just is what it is. And if we need some corrective action or some training to get it together, it just is what it is. And sometimes I think they take those things negatively, when technically it's to help you, it's to benefit you, it's to help you learn where you may, need, because I get the same I have to explain the same data. What can I do to improve? And I don't take it negative, like somebody's trying to say I'm failing, even though sometimes I may feel like I could have did something to get the team help them get a better result. I know it's data driven in that they're not saying, Tara, you yourself, you're this. This is where we at. What can you put in place? How can we get to the other side of this? But the communication may not have been negative, but that's sometimes what they see when they see the communication. The negative aspect, not you guys have done great doing this, but when they start looking at the statistics and the data and all of the information, they start feeling like we're seeing negative things about how they do their job, when our job is just to help them do their job better.
And I guess, Tara, is this, like, I got an email about something that happened on a case a while back, and I was not part of it, but I was working with a counselor on something, and I had to give an answer because now that person was on the caseload. And so first thing in my mind, it's not personal, it's business. And I had to do an x-ray and think about it several times. So we have to we have to wear a hat. This is work, and this is not about me as a person. And you are trying to get work corrected and done, but the way I tend to deal with that is like, it's not about me as a person, it's me as, I have to handle this situation, and to look at it as objective as possible. And I guess just some people need that reminder, and then that stepping back to realize, hey, what will be the most effective way to get this accomplished? And use the other people. How could we use their strengths? Because maybe I'm not seeing that, but the other person is seeing something else, and work together to figure out a solution for the issue. And so I think that's just wearing different hats, because, you know, like if they're flustered and have a lot of things, you know, just, okay, when are your best? And just meet with your other parties to get, how can we work this together? I need to understand what you're asking. I think that tends to help, because in your role, yeah, you're definitely, you know, having to give feedback to people. And if you're not getting the reaction that you're wanting, then just, and it's not all the time, but in those instances, maybe just having a conversation. It's not about you personally, it's about, let's go and fix this situation so it doesn't happen again. Maybe that's.
But see, that's where when Sandy mentioned the wrong bus, some people, you have to be a professional to be in a professional environment, or at least be willing to upskill yourself to become a professional. And I think that's one reason the turnover rate is high. I believe that's one of the reasons that our applicant pool is low, because the professionals are opting to stay at 100% at home if they can. And I just think for us, we still have to be mindful, even though we want to fill the seats, we got to fill the seats with professionals so we can be productive.
That is it's a skill very much needed. Emotional intelligence is critical skill.
And Veronica, we're talking about the bus that was earlier in this meeting. So you're familiar with that concept, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's all I was hitting on. I'm not trying to be a negative person. In fact, I hope to be positive, but I know sometimes we've got considerations when there's just so much wrong that it's hard to balance.
Oh no, I didn't take it negatively. I mean, for me, once you recognize they shouldn't be on the bus, then I feel like get them off the bus, you know, like I think I didn't take that negatively. If a person's mindset is set on being negative, on feeling as though they're always under attack, there is absolutely nothing that you can do to shift that. So for someone who is set on being in that place, there's nothing that you can do to shift that. And if you can't shift it, then what's next, right? So I'm more than anything been listening, because if you do bring people on board whose mindset isn't that this is a professional work environment, that I'm going to be open to constructive criticism and feedback, all those things that are withdrawals, right? If I'm not open to being corrected, then how can I be a team member, right? So I'm listening. I think what you're sharing is important, because it's a reminder that there's only so much you can do. And yes, we want you to be aware of the fact that you have to shift your leadership skills depending on the person that you're dealing with. But there sometimes we do trainings and there's always one person that is negative in their feedback. Everything is a 0. And Robin's always like, what did we do? Why is this person so upset? And for me, it's like, okay, well, they were set to be upset no matter what, right? So if you're dealing with someone who you already know has no intentions of shifting their mindset or behavior, then that's not part of what we're trying to get you to understand, because that's in a totally different area and field.
The vampire.
Right. And so I understand that completely, and that can be hard to deal with. I mean, Robin, when she came in at Currents as a new director, she was met with some challenging behavior from some of my colleagues who were just never going to see her as the director, who were never going to respect her as she should have been respected, right? And so for her, I'm sure that was a challenging time to be a director of a new team. But, you know, here we are, how many years later, and she can tell you who's still around, right? Because ultimately they had to decide that they couldn't be part of the bus. So sometimes losing those people who have already decided they're not going to do the work that's necessary is not a bad thing, right? But what we're talking about today is how to retain those people who are doing great work and who are willing to show up and who are making sacrifices to be a part of your organization and agency, right? So that's where appreciation comes into play, because for those people, they should feel seen, heard, and valued. So I didn't take that as negative. I know that happens all the time, because sometimes people see the pay and they take a job and they don't even recognize what it takes to do that work, right?
And that's where it is in my mind. I usually, for me, when I see that in a person, that, okay, I thought I might want to do this, but this is not what I really thought it was going to be. You know what I'm saying? Because it's detail oriented what we do. And if you're not a detail oriented person, this is kind of made, it's going to be a challenging area for you to be here because it's detail oriented.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. It takes a lot. I don't think that the job description, you can read it. They've never changed it. I don't know how long the job descriptions have been like that, but I thought, oh, this is going to be a breeze. And then I wasn't told that and it doesn't matter. I'm not saying anything bad, negative about this, but they didn't tell me I would be working with a visually impaired counselor, transition counselor, and she was going to need a lot of my help. So that wasn't relayed to me whenever I was chosen for the job. So when I got in there, it was like, oh, okay, what do I do? I was doing the forms. I was having to, make sure that everything she put on a form was done. And basically, I just had to do all the forms for her, and then she would have to, electronically sign them, which was not a big deal, but it took a lot of time, but she couldn't do that. She couldn't do both those things, and her paperwork and everything else she had to do. So being upfront with what's going on should be, told to the new hire. And I don't feel that that's what was mentioned to me 4.5 years ago. So, that's something, I don't know how counselors feel. I don't know if they knew if they've never done this type of work. I know we get a lot of people from CPS that were friends with the VRS. And so I know they know the paperwork. They had a ton of paperwork and had to know what to do. But other than that, if you're just a new counselor coming in, you're not going to know the extent of what you have to do at all. And it's a lot. So
Elaine, what shifted for you once you recognized that the expectations weren't clear for you? When you first
I'm one of those persons, I just shifted and adapted, because I knew that whenever I first found out, like it was like the third day of work is when I found out. I didn't even know she was visually impaired. And I'm like, hey, is something going on here? And she's, oh yeah, I'm legally blind. And I'm going, nobody told me that, she wasn't in on the interview. She wasn't, so it was kind of I just adapted, and did the best I could to help her. And because that was my goal, is to make sure that the caseload was taken care of. But I had 2 transition counselors, and there was a lot to do for 2 transition counselors. And then, that added on with the visually impaired transition counselor was an extra job, a third job actually. So.
But you were self-motivated enough to recognize
Oh
that
yeah.
shift. And
oh yeah.
And I think that makes a difference. I don't know what your hiring process looks like, but that's important to understand whether you're hiring individuals who have that self-awareness, who know how to motivate themselves to lead differently if necessary. And I think that could be the challenge with trying to fill seats. When there's so many vacancies and very few applicants, how are you ensuring that hiring process takes into consideration that this job can look different every day?
That's
so
for
people
sure.
Aren't self-motivated, or if they aren't open to showing up differently depending on what the day is, that they might not be successful, in that job. That's a lot. And I don't know how to fix that, but hopefully the SWOT analysis piece and thinking through some of those pieces might help to come up with concepts and ways to address that part of the challenge in leadership. Right. So in the last 9 minutes, I'm going to talk about recognition versus appreciation, which is not where we are in the conversation, but for the sake of wrapping things up, for those employees who are showing up like Elaine, with the willingness to shift, with the willingness to invest, even in the midst of confusion, you want to make sure that they feel appreciated. That makes a difference. And if we're making those deposits of appreciation randomly throughout the year, then when it comes time to have some of those courageous conversations where feedback is given, it makes it a little bit easier for that employee to be open to that, right? Because you've encouraged them all year. You told them that you value them. You told them that you believe they can do great work. So the goal is to do those deposits or give those deposits in a way that when you have to have some of those tougher conversations, they remember how much you said that their work matters, right? And so it's important to make sure that you're celebrating the individual and making them feel seen, not celebrating them in the way that you want to be celebrated, but in the way that they want to be celebrated. When we teach civility at Currents, we talk about civility being your willingness to notice the needs of others without the need to be noticed, right? And so when we're appreciating individuals for their work, we want to notice them. We want to let them know that we see them. We see how hard they're working. We see their willingness to shift, so that they know that although it's being done over in their corner, you can see how hard they're working, right? So it lets them know that they matter, and so does their work. The chart on the screen talks about the most important drivers of great work. The most important drivers of great work. And we were on a project with a group who across the board, everybody in the agency got raises, and the leadership just thought those raises are going to fix all the problems, right? Well, when they did not, there was mass confusion. And what they didn't understand was those raises meant nothing if people didn't feel like they were being recognized as individuals, if they didn't feel like what they brought to the table mattered. And so money is great, but telling people that you see them and you see their hard work and celebrating that individually goes farther in filling their emotional bank account. So employee appreciation helps to retain top talent, knowing that people care about you, knowing that they have 3 children at home who are growing and asking about how they're doing. Those things matter to people, right? Employee appreciation increases employee engagement. It also encourages high performance, right? So I work better for people that I know care about me. I've been full-time at Currents here for a little over a month. And in the span of my first month, I think I've had like 3 or 4 incidents, and Robin was probably like, why did I hire this girl? Because she just got so much going on, right? But everything that she's asked me to do, for the most part, I have completed those tasks. So I don't have to feel like I owe something because I had these moments happen in my life, right? People who feel celebrated at work are more likely to think that promotions are fair because trust is there. If you celebrate me, if we have open conversations and dialogues, and I believe that what you do is fair and just. People who feel celebrated at work are more likely to drive innovation and bring new ideas forward. As Javier was saying earlier, trust me to do the work. And if you trust me to do the work, I'll do great work. And they tend to go above and beyond in the workplace. I am a person who I will work hard for you as long as I feel like you value me and appreciate me. But once you start making me feel like I am just a workhorse, as someone used that phrase earlier, I tend to do what they call quiet quitting. I tend to back and do the bare minimum because I don't feel celebrated. I don't feel like I can be who I truly am, right? So in making sure that people feel recognized and seen is important. Any questions about that? Okay, so now some of this is in your homework, but the big question is, do you know if your coworkers feel appreciated? Do you know if your coworkers and colleagues and staff feel appreciated? And if you know that they don't feel appreciated, how will you shift your behavior to help them feel appreciated? How will you implement what you've learned today? And do you have any aha moments from what we've discussed? We have like 4 minutes to discuss that. So how will you shift your behavior to help others feel appreciated in the workplace?
One of the things I'm gonna do, I really do think I'm gonna send out that love language test to my team that I meet with monthly. So I can find ways to show them besides telling them that I appreciate them based on what their top 2 are, to see if there's something that I can do in their top 2 to show them that I do appreciate, because for the most part, my team is awesome. The purchasing team is a great team. Most of them are very well versed at their jobs, but I want to show them the appreciation and also give them inspiration on how to lead their staff, on the field level. I want them to have the buy-in, give the positive energy and things of that nature. And find, I'm not saying they need to send it to the people they work with, but I want to model for them what the expectation is at their level for them and field staff.
Thank you.
Being curious and listen with intent, not just I heard you and just go about doing the same thing, just being curious and try to really listen to all what they're saying to help, learn what style works for them and what makes them be in synchrony. How can we be in synchrony to get our goals accomplished?
Thank you. Yes, curiosity is important. And I always try to have like the curiosity of children. If a 5-year-old asks you a question, they really want to know the answer. And then they're going to circle back with a follow-up question and probably another one, right? So that curiosity goes a long way. Dr. Robinson, you said active listening or mindful listening, right? Anyone else? Well, I know it can be challenging to lead when some people don't want to be led. But as we've already said, don't focus all your energy there, because that could be a big withdrawal for you, right? There are some people that you can lead and some people you just have to manage. Here's the numbers, here's the metrics. Here's what you're doing right, here's what you're doing wrong, and move on, because they won't receive it if you try to do it any other way. And I think you should give yourself permission to do just that. So Javier, you have your hand up?
Yes, Ms. Jackson, I just wrote send actually. So I guess it's easier said than done. It's a complex process to satisfy 10 different people with different personalities and likings and so forth. But I think that if the effort is evident from that supervisor that he or she is trying to make things better for you, I think that is greatly appreciated, the effort. Okay, it's not exactly what I like, but I can see you're trying. And just with that, that's very valuable to me. It means a lot to me that my supervisor is trying to make things better for me. So that if the attempt is evident to me, I like that.
If the effort is evident. Yeah, you're a wordsmith. I mean, that's really nice right there. Any other thoughts before I think we have a break, or are we going straight into Dr. Robinson?
I can put it to a poll. We are on the agenda down for a 10-minute break at this time. If you all want to keep going, that's fine with me. How do you feel? You got to tell me, keep going, thumbs up.
Yeah. Let's
Keep
keep
it
going.
All right, cool. Dr. Robinson. Thank you, Veronica. Great discussion, great presentations. I really appreciate the information. Lots to think of, great resources to share with your staff, your colleagues, and to improve motivation and engagement in the workplace. Don't also forget to think about and use these tools for the SWOT and consider it for your action plan. Like, how can this be of greater benefit for the agency? Maybe there is a practice that we need to think about implementing for managers and for directors. So think about that in terms of your action plan for your community, for your SWOT recommendations. So at this time, we're going to turn it over to Dr. Robinson, who's got us a great presentation prepared on understanding the personal accountability model. Thank you, Dr. Robinson.
Hello. Okay, so we're pushing forward. So I am wrapping us up, and I have to go after Miss Jackson. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you. I had not done the love languages quiz or assessment in a long time. I was kind of happy, but then I was kind of worried, but that's my type A, that nothing really changed after the first time I did it. I'm still high on acts of service. But it was great. So thank you. I did it as well. And I really enjoyed going back and kind of looking back at that. Dr. Freeman and Ms. Jackson and I discussed, what we were going to talk about today. And of course, accountability is very important. I think language of accountability is actually the title of the presentation today. But I felt like before I could just really jump into talking about the language, we really need to understand what is personal accountability, because before you can try to work with your team and try to have team accountability, it's really important, because we've been talking about this a lot, to look within and to really look at what would be your personal accountability so you can build from there. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes on that so that, of course, we will have time for wrap up and then any questions. So just some boring, basic kind of background information on the personal accountability model, like where the movement or it started from was in 1979 by Mark Samuel. And just a basic foundation is that it just provides insight on what it means to be accountable. And it helps to answer, how can I contribute to my own success and then therefore that of a team? Like, what can I bring to the table to help my team? Because as a leader, I think that mistakes that we have all made or leaders can make is that the pressure is on you. What are you gonna do? And we all know as counselors, you can be off-putting. It can put people on the defensive. So I think the personal accountability helps to kind of reflect, put the mirror back on us and say, what can I do as a leader? How can I show or model maybe what accountability looks like? And it'll of course help to build trust between you and the team. So this is, if you research Google or whatever personal accountability model, this will more than likely be the model that you were seeing. There's some that come out that kind of build more off of this, but this is the foundational model that of course we're going to be working from today. But that's really just, for me, I like to make things plain. Like, I'm a visual person, so it really helps me to understand when someone is trying to teach me or go over something with me, that I just kind of see where it stems from and where I need to go. So the top part is the accountability loop. This is where we want to be. We don't want to be caught up in that bottom loop of the victim loop, because you can see that's a really vicious circle or cycle of where we're ignoring things, we're denying that things are happening, we're putting blame on others, and maybe we should be looking within, like I was saying earlier. We're rationalizing, well, this is why this happened because, maybe I, or maybe you, or whatever. And then we're resistant or resist change, maybe resist listening, like we were talking about earlier. listening and communicating with our team. And then we just hide, whether it's physically or just emotionally hide and not being open to having those discussions, those crucial conversations. In the middle between that accountability loop, and we're gonna get into and there's another slide or slides on this, but in the middle, you'll see intention. And intention is where if you want to be others to be accountable. I don't like saying be held accountable because it's almost like force, because we're going back to like the micromanaging, what we were talking about in our earlier presentation and doing things like that. So I don't like saying hold someone accountable because we're all adults, right? And we all make our own, like you see, choices. We all have different situations, but the intention there is to really just bring a person to where they're becoming accountable. They're starting to self-examine. Again, I use reflection or self-reflection, but same kind of idea. They're starting to recognize that this is not working. What I have done before or what I'm doing now is not working. So just being accountable, not holding someone accountable, because as a leader, that's what you want to do. You want to start helping a person to really see for themselves and be able to grow and develop from it, not just forcing them and not, again, micromanaging them to a point where they're probably just not going to do anything at all. So like I was saying, that top loop or the top part of the personal accountability model is accountability. That's where you recognize that the behavior is not contributing to the team's result that you want to get to. And that you're starting to have some ownership of where you may be the issue, or you haven't been doing something as a leader. So you start to do, like, it's called a QBQ model. So it's the question behind the question. So you just start asking yourself, and maybe even your team eventually, just a series of questions that begin with what or like how. Like, what role might I play or you play? And you got to be careful on when you're going to use those pronouns. Or maybe we play in the frustration of the team. You know, what might we do or you do or I do? And you'll kind of know when to use what pronoun and when to move the needle, you know, in the right direction. Because you want to build that accountable team, because an accountable team is responsible for the working environment, the barriers, and joint results. Not that this is your fault. Again, we're going into blame. We're going into that victim loop of why we didn't get the outcomes that we wanted to get. You want to get to forgiveness. Everybody makes mistakes. I'm really hard on myself about that, what I talked about earlier. I don't ask for help. I don't like making mistakes, but I do. And so just forgiving myself, like, I messed up. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I should have listened to you when you said maybe we should try it this way, and I didn't. So now I'm owning that. And can we go back to that and have some further discussion on what you were trying to do earlier? I should have listened. And then take action, like create progress. We don't want to be the one that is breaking down the team moving forward. And without clear intention, there is no accountability. Kind of like the exercise we did where we were doing the triangles and the circles and everything. And I think I heard someone say, well, the communication, or I wasn't really clear. That's happened to me a whole lot of times. I've been on the receiving end and I've been the one giving the instructions that weren't clear. And now I usually try to remind myself to ask, am I making sense?
Yeah.
Is this clear? Does anyone have any, questions? Because in my mind, it's clear. That doesn't mean that what I'm communicating, that people aren't getting it. And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with them. Maybe I just need to, say it in a different way. Words matter. So we need to make sure, that those things are being done. And then in this victim loop, I tried to make it actually look like a loop because we don't want to do that. You go through those phases, like I was stating earlier, of ignoring and denying, and that just makes the situation worse. Like, I had a supervisor and I was the second in command, and I would always have to be the one to address the conflict. So what does that make me? And like, if you look at it, a parenting side, that makes me the bad parent, or I'm always a parent that's getting on to the child about not doing things instead of going at it as a team. So they can see that we are coming in and this is an issue as a team. And then he would come in and he would just look like a superhero all the time, like he saved it, but you were really the one giving me direction to address the conflict. And so I really hated that. It really just put me in a bad disposition, I guess, because I knew that that was starting to be the way people define me. And that wasn't really who I was, but I had to be that person. And I don't mind addressing issues. I think that conflict can be good because we can talk and we can work things out. It doesn't necessarily have to be seen as something negative. Like we were talking about before, we can turn something into a positive. So if we have an issue, let's see if we can work through it and turn it out. It all connects, with the SWOT analysis. If we have a weakness, let's see how we can turn it around and make it a strength or make it an opportunity for it to become a strength. And then again, you just want to discourage any of these type of behaviors that fall within this victim loop because they just really break down the team. It says here communities, and just make sure we keep an open floor for discussion so that we can talk. If people feel like they can't ever say anything to you as the leader, that's an issue. And it should bother you as a leader that people feel like they can't talk to you, because that we're not always going to agree. We may not always see things the same way. And then just going back, I just may not be communicating well, especially when I know I have to get something done. I tend to just kind of like want people to know what I'm talking about so we can get to it and, and get to the meat of it. And I have to slow myself down so that, and even write out like a vision of what I want to happen, or maybe like, a brainstorming like we were doing earlier, so that I can make sure that I'm communicating everything before I say it, and we should do that a lot, even in regular conversations, like we were saying earlier about maybe not responding so fast and having time to process things so that we don't get caught in this victim loop of accountability, because that's not where I think any of us want to be, but we've all kind of been there probably sometime or another. Are there any questions on the two different loops?
I just had one comment about what you were saying with people not being afraid to give feedback. And we've had trainings where people, we've talked about this accountability loop, and people will go amazingly quiet to let you know that the culture of the organization is such that they have been trained not to give, to be honest, to give the feedback. But we have grown up in a culture where we've been told if we can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. And that's not how leadership works either, is it? We need to hear the good, the bad, the ugly. We need to hear it all if we're going to be our best selves and not put it back on Adrian. Dr. Robinson, you always bring me bad news. You're the bad guy. I'm just trying to do what's best for the agency, and here you always point out bad. Well, no, it's not that I'm trying to make you look bad. I'm trying to help you, or as we say in Arkansas, I'm trying to hope you. So we have to shift our mindset that just because we're getting negative information that we can't say anything unless it's positive.
It's absolutely true. And then there's just a way to say it. I just take it from, my dad. You can say almost anything. He used to tell us growing up. It's just the way you say it. And so just trying to figure that out. I know it's not easy. But I think, again, going back to what was said earlier about taking time to process and not feeling like you have to give an immediate response, that helps out a lot. Because then you really start to sit in it and reflect on what was said. I think like Ms. Jackson said, like they're trying to comfort me, Cause I get like that too in the email. I'm like, oh, okay, you chose violence today. Let's go. But really not. Maybe they should have took a minute. But one of us has to be the adult. I think emotional intelligence was brought up. One of us has to have the emotional intelligence to say, okay, I'm not going to keep on letting this go further, because then we will be fighting in the parking lot, you know, after work or at lunch. You know, you was in school, at lunch was the time when it went down. And so we don't want that to happen. So one of us has to step up and hopefully be the bigger person. And then that'll bring the other person around, because you've kind of changed the temperature of the conversation. And that's what we want at the end of the day, to get to some type of resolution. Maybe we won't be able to, I think it goes back to lead like we want to. Maybe we have to manage, and then that's okay if we have to do that. Okay, so in this process and looking at the loops, the different loops, the accountability, victim loop, we also need to look at these things. And when we're working on developing our own personal accountability, like know your role. I heard that conversation talking about job description. Maybe we do need to revisit some job descriptions, or maybe we need clarity. You know, those other duties as assigned messes people up all the time. What are those other duties as assigned? Because, you know, they can pop up with any and everything. And be honest. Like Dr. Freeman was saying, let's be honest. Let's have some conversation about how you really feeling. You don't have to be mean about it. You don't have to be rude or disrespectful. I've been having those conversations with my supervisor and how I've been feeling, because I've been kind of processing on them and not really saying anything. But then I'm like, okay, now I have to say something, because things are not getting better. They're getting worse. And then just take responsibility of maybe your part, basically. Like apologize if necessary, make amends. You know, providing the clarification. If you said something, but that wasn't what you meant, but that's how they took it, it's okay to say, you know what, I can see how you might have received it that way, but that was not my intent. And I want to apologize. And this is what I meant to convey or to communicate to you. It's okay to have that conversation. It doesn't lessen you as the leader to have that conversation and to say, I didn't mean that, or apologizing. Just like with parenting, it doesn't lessen you as a parent to say, I'm sorry to your child. You know, old school parents were not gonna say, I'm sorry. I don't think I ever heard my parents tell me they were sorry, but I have done it with my own daughter. And it has really helped our relationship, you know, as she has grown into the young lady she's coming into. And then use your time wisely. Like, you might not think how this connects to accountability, but it really does, because when we get into the language of accountability, time management is crucial, because if you say you're going to do something, that's part of accountability, then you need to do it at the time and when and where you said you were going to do it, and avoiding that procrastination on getting things done. Because if you're like, well, I've always gotten things done at the last minute, they've always been amazing. Let me tell you, as you get older, the things you used to do and how you used to do them, then it's not going to work out like that. Because I used to be able to not have to study or read or do anything when I was in school at undergrad, and then going on, like, I had to make time to do certain things and to study and to set that time aside. I just couldn't do like I used to do. You're like, things just weren't the same. The mind wasn't working the same as it used to. Recognizing and admitting a mistake, that yes, it does dignify, because it shows your humanity. To me, that's just my opinion. It's transparency. And that's something that people look at leaders for, because a lot of times it's kind of like, do as I say, or because I said so. And that's why I always kind of compare it with parenting, because it's a lot like that. You know, people take on maybe more of that authoritarian style in leadership, when maybe it should be more of a mix. You know, I'm more transformational Because I know that I am not or may not always be in the position that I'm going to be in. Someone else is going to be in there, and I want them to be able to be a good human, a good leader in that position. So I want to be a part of their positive growth and development. So I really try to be mindful of how I'm leading, and making sure that they're gonna be great, and they pass that on. Okay. So when we think about, okay, I'm working on not getting in the victim loop, I'm working on being more accountable, I'm knowing my role, I'm looking at time. So these are some additional things, like don't overcommit. I think that affects people a lot. And I think you feel like you have to say yes to everything. And that's why I felt like it was important to say yes to the person and maybe no to the task. I'm sorry, I can't do that this week. Can I do it for you next Wednesday? Or like I just sent something out recently, like, can we work out a plan to how we can get this done? Because they wanted it, that the email wanted it done at this time, but instead of saying no, because I really couldn't do it at that time, can we work out a plan? So I'm saying yes to the person, but no to the task. Like I can't do it right now or when you were wanting it, but I really want to do it. But can we do this another way? Or I'm sorry, I can't take this on right now, but maybe this person can assist you. Maybe you have to forward it on to someone else. And this person might be better because they, like the example here says, I know this person is working on developing their Excel skills. So maybe now you're also sharing and developing another person because they've never had an opportunity because people are always coming to you. So I'll say, well, such and such is really great at this. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that. And so, that's another way to not overcommit yourself. And then again, another part is just making changes. And that goes back to that QBQ model, which is the question behind the question model, meaning what could I have done differently? That's a question you can ask yourself. Remember, what role might I play in the frustration of others? Like, what could I have said or done differently? Again, I internalize a lot too. So usually I don't do it as much as I get older, but I think about almost every conversation I've had with a person through the day and think about, even if it went well, was there another way that maybe, we could have done something in that conversation? I'm always thinking back to it. So that's part of my decompressing of the day, just going back over the conversations that I've had with people, or if they were really bad, like how could this have gone another way? What could I do tomorrow to maybe, again, going back to making amends or seeing if we can fix it. I'm a fixer anyway, but try to fix things. And that's kind of bad too, Elaine, because when things don't get fixed, we're really torn up about it because we're fixers and we want to make things right or want to make things better. And we can't always do that. It may not always, and especially may not always happen the way that we would like for it to happen or for the direction we would like it to go. So that's a part of forgiveness and being able to move forward and saying, okay, well, it doesn't look like what I wanted it to look like, but this is what it looks like. So how do we move forward?
Yeah, and acceptance that, hey, and like you said, accountability, this, I messed up, or that wasn't right, or something like that is just, the fixer is a bad thing. Sometimes it can be a good thing, but it can be a very bad thing because I've lost many hours of sleep from trying to be a fixer.
Yes, me too. Still. Yeah, I have to make myself wind down at night because we're constantly thinking, right? It's a comedian who made a joke about how women, that's all we do. We think, and that's why we're not getting any rest at night. So I've been having to do a lot of mindfulness.
Yeah.
To work on that. So that's the start of what is actually on the agenda, which is the language of accountability. But I just felt like we really needed, you guys it would really be important for you guys to understand a personal accountability model before we go into just talking about the language. Okay. So defining language. So language is the perceived structure of how messages are sent and received, you know, kind of like we do, think about it like with text messages. We use language all the time, either as a transmitter of our thoughts and information or as a receiver, like we were just talking. So how I receive what people say to me, like I said, internalizing, we staying up at night because we're thinking about all the conversations we've had and just going through everything. That's language too. Accountability language is visible, it's palpable, like we can feel it. It's almost something we can touch. That's why I said time management is important. And there's a process to learning it and using it so we can receive it for positive results, not only just for you as your own personal accountability, but just for as also transferring that to the team. So remembering that there's just not just 4 steps, but these are the main steps of acquiring new language. When you think about when you learn a new language. So you're hearing it, recognizing it, understanding it, and then of course, speaking it. That's really going to help with the language of accountability. Hearing, recognizing, understanding, and speaking it. So I found that these 3 C's of accountability, and we've kind of touched on them a little bit, are really important in that language. So clarity, like providing clear direction from an authorized manager or supervisor. I know there are probably jokes around the office because we have them too. They think they are the manager. Or my institution, they think they're the dean. You are not my boss. You know, they want to try to boss everybody around all the time. That's why I put in authorized manager or supervisor, because sometimes there's just too many wannabe supervisors or managers always trying to tell folks what to do. And some people actually listen to them because, you know, maybe they've been there a long time, or maybe they do see them as a leader, but they're not actually the leader. So the direction, the clear direction needs to come from you as the manager and the supervisor. That's the key, to make sure that that is clear. And there's a difference between tactical details and precise direction. It's almost like I was trying to think about a way to describe this as like Google Maps. Google Maps, if any of you have realized, and I'm sure you have, because it's frustrated probably everyone in the world, they will take you all the way around the world when you could have just had a straight path to get where you're going. And I always get mad at myself when I put on Google Maps when I'm looking for something, when I was like, dang it, I should have used Waze or, you know, or something else, because you'll realize, oh, if I would have just turned right and then made a left, I was where I was at. But then Google Maps wants to take you in a whole different, they want to give you the scenic route. For some reason, they want you to see other places or where you could have gone. And to me, that's a plain understanding of tactile details and precise direction. Like maybe after you give the precise direction, you might want to give some tactical details, but let's make sure the direction is clear and like it's understood also. Maybe that it needs to be the other part that I don't think people add when they're giving directions, is that it's understood, because I could think the directions are precise, but are they understood? And I think that's the difference between like Google Maps and everything else. It's like, I don't know where I'm going because it seems like I'm just going in circles. So maybe step by step, but that's where the love languages maybe could help in office, and understanding how people receive and give directions, maybe understand directions or receive things. Maybe someone, you write it out plain, step by step is great, and then you go over it face to face. Maybe that's something to do. It may seem like overkill to you, but everybody just doesn't receive and understand things the same. And that's an important thing to know as a leader, that you may have to give those directions or those directives in different ways. just so you can make sure that everybody is clear and on board. Leaders should communicate the outcome that is sought. Like I would have someone say, well, you did this, but you didn't do that part because this is what I actually wanted. Well, that wasn't what was said. I didn't know that. So make sure that you communicate. This is the outcome. This is what you want it to look like in the end. So that is clear, because maybe then your colleagues or your staff, they will go a different direction, or they would have did something differently if they would have knew this was the outcome that you wanted. So maybe being transparent about the outcome, or at least as much as you can. If you can't tell everything, at least as much as you can to make sure you're getting what you actually need. And then commitment is the second C. And there's two elements to that. The opportunity for dialogue and an answer to the question of why the assignment is important. And that goes back to what Dr. Freeman was discussing about those important conversations and being honest and saying what needs to be said, so that you can get the commitment that you need from your staff. Because if people can kind of feel like when you're not telling them everything, or when you're not being open, or when you're not saying what really needs to be said, you can see some people, because I'm one of those people, it's on my face. Can we just address the elephant in the room? Because we're just talking all around it. And I hate to be on the Zoom calls because I know my face is going to be jacked up when someone is BSing, right? And I will have people kind of text me or say something, private message me like, straighten your face, your face is getting messed up. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I have to, fix it. But if we can just have that opportunity to have that dialogue about real things that we need to talk about, that's important to really get me to commit, because otherwise I'm gonna be like, okay, well, I'm doing it because it's my job, but I'm not really committed to it. Am I making sense? Like, I'm not really here. I'm not really vested in the outcome of what we're doing. And you really want that, because that's when people really shine and give their best. And then the other C's of accountability is that they need to have consequences. Like, work without consequences then makes the work inconsequential, right? It's like, okay, but if I don't do it, nothing's going to happen. So I just probably won't do it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative connotation. Like, I need this done because if we can't get this done, then we can't move on to this part. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like you're going to be punished or something will happen to you, but this needs to happen. And that's why it's so important to be honest and upfront as possible, so people really know the details. Going back to clarity, people know really why. What did Ms. Jackson say? Like a 5-year-old, like if they're asking the question, they really want to know. And they will ask you why all day long. They will why you out. I literally had to change my name when my daughter was little. I was like, don't call mama. My name is whoever. And she would just fall out laughing and think that's hilarious, because she would ask me questions all day long because I wasn't really giving her the answer that she wanted or that she thought was right. And that is kind of the same here. Like, so we need to make sure that there are consequences attached to it, but not necessarily negative. Like, if this isn't done, then maybe this thing that you really wanted to happen, it can't be done. Or we won't get the funding that we thought we were going to get. Or maybe the project that you really wanted us to work on or get to, that you brought up in the leadership meeting, we can't get to because we have to do this first. That's a consequence. So it doesn't necessarily have to be negative. And then now we're in the language. The actual language of accountability. I can, I will. Those are really strong, right? It's if someone says, well, I'll try. That's not a strong language of accountability. When we go in and we're doing this work with individuals, and if we were to survey or assess people and say, well, what type of language do you use when you have to get a task done, when there are deadlines attached? And they said, well, I told them I would see if I could get to it. or I'll try, that's a big one all the time. That's not a strong, that tells me and that tells us that there's not a strong language of accountability. But if you say, I can do this, I will do this, I choose to do this, that's a strong language of accountability. I should, but if you say I might or maybe, that's not strong. Yes, no is a strong language. I don't think so, or I'm not sure. That's not strong language of accountability. So we want to make sure we have that strong language in there. And if it's not there, then what do we need to do as leaders to get us there? These are the biggest offenders of accountability language. You may not think so. And I have had to change and make sure that I don't put ASAP. Because I used to put ASAP all the time. ASAP to me means like right now. ASAP to somebody else could be something else. That's why it's a big offender. You say as soon as possible. Well, you said as soon as possible. It's not possible right now. So we need to make sure we're putting stronger language in there, or I'll get right on it at the end of the week, of the month. That's not really strong language for being accountable, like an actual deadline. I need this by April the 19th, by 3:00 p.m. Not after 3:00, not by the end of the workday. Well, what if someone's workday doesn't end at 5? You're thinking, oh, my end of my workday. The end of your workday is 5, but maybe their end of their workday is 6 or 7. Later, try, like I said, try by next time we meet. No, that's why at the end of meetings, you should work to set another date and time for your next meeting. Because when is the next time you're going to meet? That's not real strong language of accountability. A Star Wars fan, so do or do not, there is no try. So maybe we can reference back to Yoda. If you watch Star Wars, if you don't, okay, I'll be the cheese that stands alone. But that's the language of Yoda. There is no try. It's either yes or no, I will, I can't. That is the language of accountability. Try is really not, it's a huge offender. So now I've told you what are the biggest offenders, what's the good language of accountability. So what does that look like? Because that's how I'm thinking. I like to see examples and what do things look like. So the 3 most important rules in creating accountability are being specific. Try saying specificity 3 times. Specificity. I tried to practice it before. Yeah, and it's really hard. So practice making commitments using the language of accountability that we just talked about by saying, I will do it on X date at X time. Because we're not putting ASAP, we're not putting right away or by the end of the week, we're actually being very specific. So when you're talking about specificity, it looks like what day and time should you follow up to make sure the loop is closed? Who owns it? Who's doing what? And then I will in lieu of try or should or might or maybe. And then here's what it will look like when it's completed. So if you have an example of what you want something to look like, include that. It's just like me being an educator. When I make assignments, I try to make sure I have an example for my students, because then they just kind of throw up anything, right? Or you didn't say how you wanted it to look, because that's the first thing they're going to say. Or, I thought it should look like this because this is what, it seemed like from the direction. But if I give a template, if I give an example or a description, then I'm more specific. So I'm using that language of specificity. So are there any questions? Like, that was good. That was amazing, Dr. Robinson. You're so awesome. I take it all.
That was so good and that was so amazing. Thank you. I think we all know what we're supposed to do when it comes to accountability, holding ourselves accountable and others as well. And if we remember in the CRC Code of Ethics, it teaches us that we should, when we are addressing issues, that when we see something, as they say at the airport, we say something, right? That we're not just doing it for ourselves, but we're also doing it for our colleagues. So I agree with Brandon that this is very helpful. When you said the thing about language of accountability, you hear it, you recognize it, you understand it, and you speak it. That is a great model. That should be the foundation for every training, for every, think about that, those 4 things: hearing, recognizing, understanding, speaking. Think about that for new counselors and what needs to go in to a training for a new VRC or a new RA. They need to hear it, they need to recognize it. And so how are we checking along the way how they're hearing, how they're recognizing, how they're understanding, and how they're speaking it? We know they got it when they begin to speak that language. We know we're accountable when our language changes. So that was a great reminder to me for any type of training or engagement with another person, just asking someone to say back to me, so tell me what you understood in this conversation. What did we agree upon? Let's have a I can't think of what it's called now, and we're going to be talking about this next month with the 5 dysfunctions. Is that commitment piece, and you have a commitment decision at the end of the day where you make sure everybody is on the same page, that they're all speaking it, because what sounds like commitment to me may be different for you. So hearing everybody's version of what that looks like ensures that we're all on the same page. So speaking with one voice.
Absolutely. That's what we want. That makes a high accountable team, because we're all understanding, we're all working toward the same thing. We're not like all over the place, or our commitment levels are all over the place. It just makes for a really high accountable team.
Agreed. And so at this point, unless there are other comments, anyone else have comments? Thank you again, Dr. Robinson. Carlina, did you want to say something?
Well, this was great. No, this was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here today. Before we dismiss, let me share my screen again because I'm so great at it.
And real quick, I had to pop off, but did Carlina recognize her promotion?
Carlina hadn't told us nothing. Carly, you better step up, girl. You better do a happy dance right now.
Carlina, tell us about your promotion.
Yes.
Sandy put me on the spot. When did this happen? I have accepted a supervisor position. It's been 4 weeks, I think. Yeah, so lots of juggling, still doing the USC and the supervisor. So definitely want to soak all of this in.
A lot of people have been promoted since we started this training, and I think that's really fantastic.
It's definitely helped. So I just have to thank you all for allowing the opportunity to learn.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Carlina. So what is your VR supervisor now?
It's been 4 weeks, I think. Yeah, actually it was on the 29th or 22nd of last month. So
congrats.
Thank you.
Well, if anything ever comes up and need to talk through any situations, please reach out. We'd love to support you in your pathway to success. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So for our next piece, we'll talk real quickly about homework. So if I haven't sent this out, I will send it out. And I wanted to go over it, make sure it's clear to everyone. So your assignment, which is what that should say instead of homework, your assignment based upon the 5 love languages is to think about how you can use this for motivation and engagement in the workplace. So what does that look like for your colleagues? What recommendation, or if you're a supervisor, if you're not in the seat of supervision, what plan can you use? How can you implement this? Not just doing a survey, have people take it, but what else? How can you apply this in ensuring motivation and engagement in the workplace? Perhaps there were some resources or tools or tricks that you learned from that research report on motivation, engagement, and retention. I think theirs was retention and recruitment, but there could be some things that you could share there in that creation of a plan. The second one is a little different. We're also taking this information about our love languages and even personal accountability to be aware of ourselves and how that we are applying our what we know about leadership to different to the people in our office. So the second reflection activity says we need to be more aware that we judge and assign traits to people. But is that really true? We assign the fact that we need to be aware that we judge and assign traits to people. There is a good chance that when we promote misinterpreted beliefs that they can become self-fulfilling prophecies for people around us. When we make assumptions about each person's leadership style, then we could just be autopiloting because it's easier than to actively identify and adapt. So in summary, a reflection of, I don't know if I worded that well, but how we can use our biases and assumptions to make assumptions about people. It could be based upon what other people have said, and then we make assumptions about those persons, and then we begin to look for those things we made assumptions about until they become self-fulfilling prophecies. So the goal would be to know the individual for the individual and to work based upon how we know that person, to have honest discussions and conversations with them and not base our decision-making on assumptions about other people. So for this activity, document how you prefer to communicate. What does it look like for you? Because this helps you to practice your own awareness of how you prefer to interact. The second would be to identify or to disclose your love language and communication style to others in your office. Perhaps those others may just be your supervisor. Find out their preferred love language and how they prefer to communicate and document those responses. And then how can you adapt your communication style to better accommodate your team, your colleagues, your supervisor in your effort to manage up. So those are the 3 questions as it relates to the emotional bank account, to the 5 love languages, communication, recognition, motivation, your preferred style of communication, your awareness, and then your love language, how others prefer to communicate, and then how you can adapt your style to better accommodate your team. Any questions there? Our next meeting is going to be May 15th. This assignment would be due May 8th. So our next meeting is May 15th.
Will you be sending that out? I didn't find it. If you sent it to us email, I didn't find it on the email.
I will send it out.
I got it.
Send it this morning.
Yes. Thought you did.
Yeah, you sent it this morning.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll look.
Okay. But if you don't find it, I'll send a reminder too.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Again, as I said earlier, this training has been great for me as well as a leader and a supervisor to remember, you can't just communicate it one way and you can't just communicate it once. I think this cohort and the supervisory cohort has been a good reminder to me that you have to change and adapt and adjust to how people best learn. So happy to do that. I'll post it. I don't know if anybody's using Teams, but I'll try to make sure I post it there as well and send it out by email and ensure everyone has it.
I
So
got it.
Can we commit, are we gonna be meeting the third Monday through August?
Yes, hold on, let me look at the schedule. May 15th is our next meeting. We're gonna do a meeting June 19th, July 17th. Those
Okay.
will be more to finish up that SWOT. And then our final in-person meeting is August 9th.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I think there's something in the chat. No? No.
Can you repeat that one more time? I was writing down
the
the
date?
last day. Yeah.
Repeat the dates?
Yeah.
The dates are May 15th, June 19th, July 17th, August 9th.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. And just to clarify, they're all virtual except for the last one in August will be in person.
Yes, that's correct. The last one in August will be in person.
Got it. Thank you.
Do you know where we'll be meeting in person?
Same location. For now, yeah, we're gonna say Austin. Same place we were last time.
I was thinking we'd go to like, Hot Springs or something. like
Springs.
Arkansas.
I have put in that request and was politely turned down.
Lame.
I honestly, right after I in person, I was like, is there any reason why they can't come to Little Rock or Hot Springs?
Yes.
And the answer was, yeah, but we're not gonna tell you, so. I'm just playing with y'all.
No, welcome to our world. Just kidding.
The day will come. The day will come. I think the Austin location worked out pretty well. And I thank Brandon again for showing us around and getting us to where we needed to be. So I'm looking forward to it. I know there was a request for San Antonio, maybe from the other group, or this group may have been the beach. Where was it?
Padre?
Padre Island, yes.
Padre
That's what
Island.
it was.
You can get some real reflections just being there. I'm just saying. Everybody
Some
will
real
open up.
honest feedback too, right? Very honest.
And the food is good there, by the way, too. Just
Yes,
saying.
ma'am.
You know, I don't mind asking. So the August 9th, I think I said, was due to the fact that I think we'll also have another cohort. Cohort 2 will be meeting that week in person. So so that was the reason why we were keeping it all in an accessible location. We'll explore our options. So unless there's anything else, I want to say thank you again. And if you have questions or any clarity on the assignment, please reach out. Have a great rest of your day and a wonderful week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Y'all have a
Veronica.
good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Y'all have a great week. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.